Okay, we're going to try this again. This is the SilmFilm project script discussion of Season 1, Episode 2, Take 2. Welcome. Let's try this again.
Let us do. So we were talking about the Valar. We were talking about Olmo kind of coming up in the episode a little bit later. Did we want to show the Valar going down into Arda and specifically mention the fact that Melkor didn't go with everybody else?
Would that happen at the... Oh, that wouldn't happen at the end of the music, would it?
No.
How are we ending the music?
He says Ea, right? And that's what
A of B. Let these things be. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so no one has gone down in yet.
Okay. So
at the end of the music, right. Okay.
I mean, we can gloss a lot of that sort of voiceover-ish, I think. I know that there's, for some reason, a big... I don't know.
If you overuse voiceover, it's really pathetic. If you've ever seen the movie version of Tuck Everlasting, their narrator reads chunks of the book on screen, and it's terrible. I mean, the movie in general is terrible. It's a Disney kids movie. It happened to be filmed in my hometown, so that's the only reason I've seen it. But it's a pretty scenery, but the movie is terrible. And part of the reason why is because a narrator just tells you stuff all the time. And it's shut up and show us.
Right.
No, I understand. But, I mean...
But there's times when it's needed.
Right. There's some context here that we kind of need to set. And it doesn't need to be I thought the music of the Einar stuff was going to have way more voiceover. And when we finally got to it, it was one sentence and not much else. We had to add.
I think we were going to put. We put the second sentence a little bit later. We split it up. Yeah. I think.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's two sentences.
To write that sentence. We wrote one sentence that did because we didn't have anything from the book that said what we needed it to say. So, which is exciting. I like writing.
But good, you're in the right project.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I feel like we can maybe kind of... And I don't necessarily want to show, I would rather show it sort of camera from, Manway's perspective or something. Kind of zooming down into Arda rather than showing them actually, you know what I mean?
Landing.
Yeah, rather than showing a whole bunch of lights kind of floating down towards an orb, I'd rather zoom in on the orb.
Yeah. No, I like that.
And focus on kind of showing because we've never seen Arda from space. I would like to do that. That would be cool.
Well,
and it would be their point of view. Here they are looking in at it.
Point too.
What's that?
That kind of brings up the is Arda flat at this point discussion.
Yes.
Oh no!
It should be flat.
It should be flat.
No. Oh no! This is a big deal, and we haven't discussed it yet. Oh no!
Yeah, I don't feel prepared to make that call.
But you're right; it should be. It really should be.
What I would like to actually do is, kind of be rather than there could be a downward angle, but kind of. Are there stars yet?
No, not till Varda makes them.
Okay, so what I would like to kind of try to go back to the old sort of, and I'm not suggesting that Arda should actually look like a boat, but I would like to go back to the old sort of idea that he had where there's sort of the outer oceans that are just which are basically space, right? And totally pitch black, and then kind of we get sort of the suggestion of calm, sort of wavy waters, and that the landmass of Arda kind of begins as a speck. And Of course, they have to approach from the west because, of course, they do.
Everything good comes from the West.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that exactly, but it's definitely
That's definitely Tolkien's idea in this story.
after a fashion. I wouldn't put it in quite those words, but yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're coming at Arda from the left-hand side and panning. You know, as we get closer, we kind of maybe could go up rather than down and get a better sort of look at, you know, what the lay of the land is in Valinor. And we could be like super foreshadowy with it. We could kind of maybe zoom around places that will be important. But I mean, it's kind of featureless, right? So there's nothing really there yet.
So it should look fairly primordial, right? Whatever we do.
Yeah.
What if?
I guess is it just flat dirt? Is that it? Is it like completely flat dirt?
No, there could be rock formations that have like broken, like earthquake kind of stuff and volcanoes kind of stuff. Like you can do fun things with geology.
Volcanoes yet. I don't think we could do volcanoes. I think we could do like.
But chasms.
Yeah.
What if? Let me ask you this. This just occurred to me, and I'm just going to throw it out there real quick.
Discussed.
What if we did like a little bit of a shout out to the magician's nephew?
Uh-oh.
Start out in the dark.
Okay.
And the Valar who are good, you know, because we talked about how the Valar are all glowy. They start to like come on in places because they don't, you know, they enter reality. They don't come from a place specifically. They enter existence. They enter manifest existence.
So instead of watching them like crash like meteors from heaven, you're saying they kind of just like appear on the earth.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm suggesting. All right. Well,
the reason I don't like that is because I feel like it very clearly means that Arda is the center of the universe. I'm not entirely comfortable with that notion. That's not necessarily.
You're okay with it being flat. How accurate do we have to be?
That's a very personal.
Well, I don't know about that because the stars were created to light Arda. The sun is also created. Yeah. The sun and moon both orbit Arda. It's kind of the center of the universe.
This is mostly a question of what period of time are we thinking of when we think about the Silmarillion. Because in the beginning of the Silmarillion, Arda is a boat on an ocean. But by the end of it, you know, he's talking about changing the origins of the sun and the moon because they're not science.
He wants it to be more real. Yeah, he wants it more real. But he never was able to do that, and we weren't going to do that. I think that was brought up. Yeah, so if we're not doing the sun and the moon correctly, we don't have to do the round correctly.
I mean, in the published Silmarillion, Arda is clearly the center of the universe. Like,
and it's clearly flat.
Do you want to? Well, do you want to do like a? Do you want to do like a big, like wide, overarching map shot that has little glowy bits lighting up, sort of, and it doesn't have to be exactly in the shape of Arda that we see like in the maps of Beleriand and all that.
No,
but
we can't have a map yet, can we?
No, there's nothing's been made.
Well, yeah, but you can still have like sort of vaguely blob-shaped land masses that will later conform to
Beleriand. Beginnings of Beleriand.
I don't think Outlay actually raises land from the depths of the ocean. I think he's kind of, there's a little bit of something to start with. Okay. I like that better anyway.
Well, and is there ocean, or does Ulmo just
There's the outer seas and then the inner seas, right? And so there is ocean.
Well, there is
also
once it's
space.
finished, because there's the encircling sea. They make the encircling seas, and they make the sea in between Valinor and Middle Earth.
Right.
That's not.
And there's like the whole Door of Night
So there
thing.
is, I mean, yeah, there's ocean. It's the ocean is what is outside the doors of night, right? That is
No, the
almost
void's out
perfect.
there, I thought.
That's the void. That's what the void is. It's almost purview is those deep nothing oceans that surround Arda.
I thought
That's
his purview
his-
was the oceans
his-
of Arda.
His palaces are under Arda, like below
That's true.
the ship.
Okay.
The encircling sea does go under the land.
Yeah, I remember
Hence encir- yeah.
that rendered.
Or the
something.
outer seas. Sorry, I get them mixed up, but
That was definitely my understanding. Was that the void space, right?
Yeah.
Is almost domain.
I think void is like actual outer space, void, nothingness.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that there's no like dividing line between those two things. Like it's
Well, but isn't that what the Door of Night is for?
Yeah,
Sort of.
because they kick Melkor out into the void, and that's it. He's gone.
yeah, and he can't come back in. But
Right.
I'm saying that's all technically almost stuff.
I don't think it is
Yeah.
because Melkor was out there hunting around out there before.
I don't necessarily know what the void is, and I don't know that it is going to be important right now. But
No, I don't think it will be.
but to show Arda, if we're going to show something flat, we are going to have to figure out boundaries.
Yeah.
What it
So
is.
we do have to deal with it in that sense.
Oh, little bird. That's cute. So I mean, I feel like landmass floating on nothing is weirder and harder to do than landmass floating on ocean. But
Well,
If we go to localized places, it won't matter. It's just for the establishing shotting into it that it's going to be important.
I mean,
because
would
what happens to that ocean once the world becomes round? You know, like my understanding was that it becomes part of was that ocean because there's a limited space of water that it becomes part of the ocean that is on Arda.
But there's not like new ocean.
No.
It's just-
There's when Ilúvatar folds the earth around, okay.
Hmm.
He
When
does.
the waves are bent.
How else would you describe it? He makes it round.
Yeah. Yeah, like that, but that doesn't scan for me. It doesn't. It's not like almost. You can't go to Almost Palace via Arda, right?
There's some suggestion that Tor does at some point. Actually,
No.
no. After when he
I know. After he and Idril disappear, and it's like they might have become immortal or something. We don't know.
right.
Yeah, but he doesn't walk there, right?
No, he drowns
That's what I'm
there.
saying. You can't. Well, right, but that's more of a spiritual journey, wouldn't you say? His body doesn't like actually float all the way down to. No, that's not. The point I'm getting at is that almost domain, his kingdom, his all of his everything outside of just the oceans and the water of the earth is bigger than just Arda, and that's part of the reason why he's kind of a loner curmudgeon.
He is, and I would say nobody visits his palace, really.
compared to literally every other Valar. Ulmo is kind of outside.
Yeah.
Compared to everybody else.
Right. He and Nienna are the only two who are alone, who don't have a spouse.
Yeah.
And Nienna is obviously much more part of the group than Ulmo.
Right.
Even though she...
At least in terms of like hangouts. And I think one of the ways to reflect that is that he doesn't have he's not contained exactly in Arda the way that the rest of them are.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's true.
How do we depict their arrival then?
I really like avoiding it altogether by having the camera shot of just like approaching land and seeing its a primordial waste.
Okay.
Rather than having the other idea that I don't like as much, but would be maybe useful would be that establishing shot of like sort of formless land masses that we can then compare to. Like it would be kind of neat to have sort of establishing shots in certain episodes of the map.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Oh, we're gonna have to put the map of Beleriand up like multiple times for people to have a clue what we're even doing.
Nobody's gonna have any idea where anything is.
Right.
Right.
So if you want to take that angle of
yeah, but with season one, location is so much less important, except for Utumno and Valinor. Like that's pretty much the only items we have to show on the map, and possibly the lamps as to where the lamps are. But
we could still kind of foreshadow all of that stuff by having, like I said, the shapes of the landmass, and then halfway through the season, so another sort of shot that we can like, if you were to overlay them, you'd be like, oh, okay, they actually like established this, coastline really well, and now there's trees over here, et cetera, and have sort of like multiple versions of that shot.
Right, progress shots.
Right, that are spaced out over many, many episodes.
Well, I think we would see that around Almarin. Like over time,
like
we
being
able
to point to Almarin and see how like zooming back and taking a look at what Almarin looks like and how it's related to all of the other stuff might be kind of neat. So that's another angle that I don't like it as much as my cool avoid everything idea. But I mean, in fairness to me, that would be sort of the angle that the hosts have taken on basically every hard question. Why did you?
Well, I feel like they got a little bit more specific with things as time went on. I think the early episodes were a little sparse.
Yeah, but it's kind of a running joke at this point that they're like, you know what, we'll talk about that later. Oh, why did you even do an adaptation if you weren't gonna buckle down and answer these questions? Yeah. Jeez.
And why spend 20 minutes talking about something if the answer is, here's why we're not going to talk about that.
Oh my god.
Well, they finally got to orcs.
We kind of forced their hand, and they talked about orcs instead of talking about what they were supposed to talk about that episode.
Yeah, I feel.
And it was still slightly indecisive. Slightly.
The thing that irritated me was they spent so much time talking about what had already been like slogged out over 2 weeks on the boards. And in fairness to everybody who's not on the boards, which is a lot of people, I get why they did that, but it was also super irritating because I was like, we've already discussed this ad nauseum on the boards. Can you just pick it up from where the boards left off? So that we can just get the answer and get some work done. Anyway,
yeah,
it
was
here to
a little bit
over our frustrations with the big three.
Well,
as much fun as that might be.
So we need to make a decision.
Speaking of people not making decisions and letting it go.
Yeah. I do like because what you're suggesting is kind of like a first-person view.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason I want to do that is because I can't really imagine a way to not do something hokey. And I think we should avoid hokiness as much as possible.
All right, so to focus with that, the main character is Manwë at this point, right? He's our main guy. So if we're going to do something from a viewpoint, it should be from his viewpoint.
He's the weird guy.
So we should see what he sees when he enters Arda, and he's from the air, so he can do all kinds of sweeping, establishing shots because he's Manwë. That's his deal. And as the shot goes on and we see all this, crazy scenery that's not majestic because whatever, eventually we figure out that it's a point of view. Like at first it's just establishing shots, more establishing shots. And we're like, oh, hey, this is actually someone's point of view. It can...
We use that shot to come in and just start out with seeing them starting to build stuff, because you're sweeping through. You see Owlay hammering mountains.
Past Owlay.
Yeah. Once we realize it's Manway, then he starts seeing
pulling up the pool.
You know what I would actually like to see first?
Okay.
I would like to kind of get a little bit of sort of the really, really dark black water vibe going. And then I would like to have some of the stars start to go on.
Mm-hmm.
So that we can actually have some light to see by.
Okay.
And then
Manway should find Varda first.
Yeah.
So that's good.
I don't know if find necessarily is the right word. I like just that the Varda is kind of the first thing that we get, which is stars sort of appearing.
Okay.
Yeah. I more meant he sees her work before he sees anyone else's work.
Right. I mean,
which is good, because that...
she could be floating over the ocean, I guess. I don't know. We'll shelve that for when the actual script is written. I'm just doing what they taught me, kicking the can.
That's not good.
And then we can kind of zoom past Owlay, kind of building mountains. Who else? Who else do you want to see on our flyby? Because now we can kind of do a lot of people. We can do Ivana, certainly.
Yeah. And
I would like
spreading out from her.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to do it is in that order: stars, Earth, plants. Those are
because we need Ollie before we can have Ivana.
Yeah. And and those are our first 4 people besides Manway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those were our big characters that we wanted to focus on for this episode. Who else? I guess we could see Olmo sort of filling in the waters.
Maybe he's drawing it to reference the encircling seas. Maybe he's drawing water
in from outside. I like that.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah. So, is he making fjords or something?
Color. Should be a very different color than the water that we've been seeing. Like, that water should be very, very dark. And
it's going to be pretty dark. Like, what we're seeing on screen is going to be pretty dark no matter what. So I don't think that we're going to have a problem there.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see any of this stuff because it's going to be too dark.
No. Well, we've got stars. We've already got stars.
And we've got the Valar glowing with their own light also.
Right, exactly. Should be enough to see by. Who else do you want to see? You want to see Orme galloping across the fields? No, not yet.
I don't think we need to do that in that shot. I think that the focus of this episode needs to be on the creators.
Okay.
The creators are Olmo, Owlay, Yavanna, Varda, and Manway.
Well, I don't know if Manway is a creator exactly.
Well, I mean, he's
the big boss.
Elemental air, so he kind of is necessary for things to work.
I'm thinking no clouds yet.
No, because we don't get them yet. We don't get them until.
I wanna have. We were going to have sort of the discussion between Olmo and Iluvatar, right, in episode 3? Where
episode 4, I think.
Episode 4, really?
Are you talking about when he said where he says that, and it brings you closer to Manway, who thou lovest? That one.
Thou lovest.
Yeah, that takes place after the arrival of Melkor.
Okay. But I wanted to have a scene. They talked about maybe putting those words into Melkor's mouth, essentially, and I liked that idea. I wanted to have a scene, though, where basically Olmo and Melkor kind of this is the establishment of their
relationship,
not having anything to do with one another, where he basically, Melkor kind of plays it off as look, this is way better. Look, this is clearly better. Look at all this cool stuff, and then make me.
And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it is cool. I mean, I didn't think
and well, his response is like, okay, yes, you're right. Never again without my permission.
Okay, but the focus, the story, the conflict of this episode is going to be in the fact that the Valar aren't really
working together.
That.
Yeah.
So, what do we see? We see. I mean, you can easily see Aule and Ulmo having issues. Having
tiffs.
Like, clearly, there's going to be a problem there.
Right, because their things overlap.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Professor Olsen talked about bringing Ase into it. I don't feel that we're ready to see that many characters yet.
We can see him, but it needs to be Ulmo. We need to establish Ulmo before we can introduce Ase.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you wanna show sort of lesser spirits kind of floating around the big ones?
Yeah, no, I think we should see them working with their prospective Valar,
right.
but we don't.
We're not going to learn their names yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as the audience is concerned, they're nobody until we introduce them, and all of a sudden there's somebody.
Do they have bodies yet, or are we still working with the glowy?
I think we're still working with glowy elemental forms.
All right. Cool.
But they can be slightly more substantial than they were in the void.
Yes.
Sure.
Like less see-through.
Yeah.
More color, less translucence. I got it.
Yeah, so like
their bodies
Ulmo
now.
is a solid mass of solid
water.
liquidy mass that looks like himself. You know, Aule has kind of taken on his kind of dwarfish demeanor.
All right. Cool. Does Aule have a beard?
Of course, Aule has a beard.
How could he not?
Clearly, he has a beard. There's no way he doesn't have a beard.
Does he have a beard? Do they have hair? I always pictured Aule as bald for some reason.
Bald I can get into, but beard, definitely. There's no way he doesn't have a beard.
Just seems so inconvenient for working with fire, but I guess it doesn't matter.
You can pull your hair back; it's not that big a deal.
You see, look on YouTube. You find videos of smiths making things with beards all the time.
Yeah, do you know Men at Arms?
Yes, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, well, I know one of those guys, and they were at the convention I was at today, and yeah, he's totally got long hair. Ilya. Yeah.
I used to have I had long hair for years, and I worked in a machine shop, which everybody thought was terrifying.
Yeah.
I sympathize, but
I was.
So yeah,
I kept it tied back. I always wore a hat, you know.
Right, you can be responsible with it. I wouldn't wear it like this and then hang out.
Into the drill press.
Some of us were not as blessed in the follicle regions as others, so
you probably get your hair cut more often than I do.
A little bit.
Yeah. That's actually why I grew my hair. Anyway, so all right.
Okay, so I hate to do this because I feel like we've made progress and we're headed in the right direction, but we completely forgot to finish talking about the frame.
Oh yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pause while we're going strong, especially since I have no idea what comes after this, and very quickly go back to the frame.
So we should get to know Estelle as a person in the frame in this episode. Yes.
All right, sure. I like that. That provides a lot of space for easy.
Yeah. So who is he?
That was my next question.
If we're gonna get to know him, what is there to know?
Yeah, I mean he's a 10-year-old boy. They're all the same.
They're really not.
No, I know.
100%.
Having been a 10-year-old boy who was very different from other 10-year-old boys, I know.
Yes. Yeah. There are certain childish things that are similar to that age.
There are tropes that are available to, like, all 10-year-old boys do this. But
find these sorts of jokes funny. Okay, sure.
Like, to play with
Where
frost.
do we
Not so
start?
much
Where do we?
anymore,
Where,
but
where,
when I was a kid,
where
that's
is
the
he?
thing.
Let's start from where he is. Where is he?
Mm-hmm. In
Is he in
Rivendell.
class already, or is he not in class? Those are the two.
Mm.
Those are the two big questions. Is he in class or not in class yet?
He is not in class, but I don't think we're necessarily going to have a classroom episode for this one. I feel like he needs to be interacting with the environment.
I can see that.
Elrond could take him for a walk and tell him stuff. I mean, you get to walk around Rivendell and we get to see more of Rivendell. That would be fun.
That would be awesome.
I personally would go on a walk around Rivendell with Elrond, let him talk about whatever he wants.
I have to say, like, people can say what they want about the Lord of the Rings movies, but I don't think that it's possible to do Rivendell better. Like, that was phenomenal what they did.
It was pretty good. I liked it. I didn't have strong feelings about it. It didn't offend me, but I wasn't enchanted per se.
I was maybe distracted by a few things, but yeah.
Lotro also does a really good job with it. And I remember the first time I ever actually got there in Lotro, which is hard unless you're like high level. You know, it took me and my brother about 2 hours to make our way there, just, you know, going and going. And it was beautiful. And it was worth it. It was worth every moment that we spent trying not to get mauled by ginormous bears.
Lotro for me, I had fundamental issues with the concept, so I just was very unable to. I've tried to get into it a couple of times, and I watched a couple of episodes of Professor Olsen's sort of trip through, and I think he does a good job with it, and not to say that there weren't smart, talented, creative people working on it, but I just, from its inception, I was very unhappy with what they wanted to do with it. So,
anyway,
I can't think of a less appropriate thing than following the path of the Fellowship through Middle Earth. I just it sort of destroys the fundamental premise of the Lord of the Rings in one fell swoop, but whatever. So,
anyway, so all right. So where do we meet Estelle in episode 2?
I think we should do a little bait and switch. I think he should go to the library, only to be told we're not going to the library today.
Or Elrond's not there.
What would we do if he's not there?
If he's not there,
yeah.
How would we get to class if he's not there?
Walk the same way we get to everywhere.
Right, but how is he going to get?
We can't like have a minute of Estelle sitting bored in the library. I wonder what's going to happen today. Nobody knows. Teacher's not here. Can we leave yet?
Could that be a sort of?
Anyway,
could that be illustrative of maybe the fact that Elrond doesn't 100% understand Estelle yet? Like, Elrond is like, of course that this lesson is outside and should be at this particular place. Like, how would you not know that?
That seems unfair. That seems really unfair.
You really don't know anything. I forgot, because I mean, we kind of already had that moment in the previous episode, right? I don't want to belabor the point that Elrond doesn't necessarily get Estelle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least not in the same way, because that's very similar to the moment that we had in the previous episode where he's like, now here's all of the things that exist in the world and you're asleep. Okay, we can't do that. Let's start all over. Right? We already sort of did that angle.
Yes.
So,
yeah, I mean, we can have opportunities for Estelle to ask a question that lets Elrond know, oh, you missed the whole point of that. Let me... Yeah. But we don't want to make it like clueless Elrond.
What?
So,
okay. Well, what is there something that Elrond could have to do where he sends somebody to get Estelle? That's actually it's good, because if he sends somebody to get Estelle, then we can see a conversation with somebody which could give us a window into who Estelle is that other conversants wouldn't. If we see Gilrine talking to Estelle, that's about that relationship. That doesn't tell us who Estelle is. If we see Elrond talking to Estelle,
I don't ever want to overcomplicate who's involved, but I also think that that's not a bad observation. So who goes to get Estelle? Is it just
random elf? Like, this isn't going to be a named character. This is not Glorfindel coming to get Estelle in the library.
No.
Yeah, I'm warning. Like, we're not doing that.
Would say to that. I know what Trish.
I know, which is why I said no.
All right.
I love Glorfindel too, but now that's not the way you introduce or use Glorfindel. He's not Elf's messenger boy.
One of the most powerful beings in Middle Earth at the time.
The legendarium.
Can you go fetch this kid for me?
I mean,
or he could foist the lesson off on Glorfindel, I guess, but that would be silly.
No.
All right.
So
random elf number 75 is.
It could be that. It could be a red shirt elf, or it could be Elrohir or Eladan, because they're there.
We are going to want to introduce them at some point.
Right.
Do we want to introduce them in episode 2, though?
I feel like the earlier we do it,
the better.
Better it's going to be, because otherwise there's the whole, where have these people been this whole time?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. All right. So, which one? Or both? Does he say both?
Just one.
Yeah.
Who do we want? Who do you guys like better, or are they a unit and indistinguishable?
Well,
they're kind of a unit. I think Eladan is the one who gets associated with bookish stuff more, just because Elrohir's name actually has a horse in it.
Yes. For whatever reason, Elrohir has been dubbed the man of action of the pair.
Right. So it's Eladan's the bookish one, and Elrohir is the man of action, even though they're both equally actually people who go kill orcs.
They're the exact same person.
Right. And they look identical. So, I mean, we could use one actor.
Are they actually twins? I don't remember.
Yes, they're twins.
Okay, yeah. That almost never happens, though, if I recall. I feel like I remember there being mentioned that almost never happens with elves, but
except in Elrond's family, when it happens every generation.
Oh.
Elrond has a twin brother, and his mother has twin brothers. So, yeah.
That's lucky, I guess.
Go figure.
It runs in the family.
Mm-hmm. It does. Go away. This is not for you. Don't.
Hopefully that was a pet.
She's the only one here for another couple of days. My wife's coming home on Tuesday. Okay.
All right, so Elrohir. I feel
Eladan.
like Elrohir would be, or Eladan. Well, I guess we could. There's some conflict there. All right, sure. So Eladan is sent out to fetch the boy.
Mm-hmm.
What does that conversation look like?
Well, it should start out with something like, Estelle should greet him by name so that we know his name, and Eladan should say, "Hey, Father wants to meet you over at this point."
Do we show Elrond telling him to go get?
No, I don't think we need to.
No, okay. That's unnecessary.
All right.
Yeah.
So basically we're opening the episode
with Estelle showing up all prepared, with his pencil case and his little pencil sharpener. You remember first day of kindergarten how you had everything and everything was all neatly lined up and you didn't do any of it. That's the experience.
So he shows up at the library and Eladan is waiting for him in the place where his father usually is when in that room, right?
Or is he alone in the room going, I wonder what's going on today? And then Eladan comes in and says, you're supposed to be here. I came to get you because it's been moved, essentially.
Yeah,
Okay.
like you just have him wait there for a couple of seconds.
Right, so we see Estelle and only Estelle, so we establish that he's our important character. If this is going to be the Who is Estelle episode, we should have just him for a second.
Is the door to the library open? Or is
it's Rivendell. There's no doors.
In Rivendell. Like
everything's open arches.
All right, so he goes in.
Elrond's a very transparent ruler.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I've always wondered how elves deal with dust. I feel like
thousands of years
they
of dust
not to fall on their stuff, and it doesn't.
That seems awful.
That's how they do it.
So he goes into the library and it's dark and there's nobody in there, and he kind of wanders around. A couple of wandering shots where he's like, I'm not late. It's not me. It's the crack of dawn. I'm
supposed to be here. I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he goes outside and sits on the front porch, and then Eladan comes up and is like, "Young Master Estelle, prithee, how are you?"
No, stop. Ixnay.
On the prithys.
I would be delighted if the elves spoke in Middle English. I would just love that. But I'm literally the only one, so let's not do that.
To be fair, I would love a good chunk of this to be in Quenya when we get to like actual elves who should speak Quenya. So you're not the only one who has weird taste.
It's impossible to do it. As much as it kills me to not have like those languages used fully.
Yeah.
They're going to be used.
You can have the first 3 words maybe is all you're going to get.
There's certain things you need to have, but other than that, yeah, I realize.
So
Magabanan is Sindar.
So,
yeah.
No, I was more thinking Arya and Tuluva.
Yeah.
Stuff like that needs to be in Quenya.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What do they talk about?
What do
Eladan and Estelle talk about?
Like on the way. What is this eye-opening piece of information that Estelle gives us?
Right, because otherwise there's in this scenario.
Okay.
Well, maybe Eladan would start out like, "So I hear you're learning about things," and then Estelle can be like, "Yes, I was doing this, and this is why my education is starting now." Like he can give his perspective on what's going on, and we do need to hear that because we've had.
This is episode.
Does he
episode 2 is usually fairly piloty of any show, so giving a brief explanation for what's going on.
Right.
Kind
does he think he's being punished?
That would be a potential thing of, I got into trouble, so now I have to listen to Elrond tell me stories. Which Eladan would be like, you've been there.
I kind of feel like the flavor of the story is not what he was looking for when he broke the Pricelix artifact that we have kicked down the can what it could possibly be. So maybe he's bored.
Well, because the idea was that he was focused on the adventure stories, which who wouldn't be, and he's getting the history of the Valar.
Right, he's going to Sunday school rather than watching the Avengers.
Right, and it's kind of a different thing.
Yeah. A little bit.
So I think he could express that like, well, I shouldn't have done this stupid thing, and now I have to listen to the entire history of the entire world.
Like that's kind of an act, though. I feel like that's kind of an act on his part. I feel like he does like the stories that he's learning. That's why the Anurlindale is able to get his attention. And so, he does kind of complain a little bit, but I feel like it's an act. I feel like he doesn't. Well,
he's not a reluctant student, but at the same time, he does feel like he's being
Oh no, he totally does. But at the same time, he's not. He's not like you know.
Yeah, he doesn't hate it.
Right.
He does.
And so Eladan says, maybe Eladan offers him an out, maybe, and Estelle doesn't take it.
And what out could he possibly offer?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, we were going to have later on in the season, there'd be a little bit of a conflict where Gilrayan is like, why are you wasting time telling stories? Shouldn't he be learning practical things like swordplay? That's an important thing for all young boys to learn. She wants him to be skilled, not just bookish.
Maybe he could.
Eladan and Elrohir were put forward as the people who could be teaching him how to do those skilled activities.
Maybe Eladan could offer to speak to his father on his behalf about the lessons.
Right, maybe that sounds like you've had plenty of punishments so far. If that's how you feel about it, then we can probably talk it out about it.
Feel that way. Eladan is the bookish one. He's not going to feel that way about.
Maybe he's messing with him though.
Yeah, he's hearing the kid complain. He's like, "Oh, well, if that's how you feel, I'm sure we can get you out of this."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, no, it's not so bad, really." And then we're going back to Princess Bride material. You can read a bit more.
Hey, I think that's fine. I feel like that's the attitude.
But that's actually fake. That's the one part of Princess Bride that feels so staged. The whole thing is actually staged, and that's something a kid would really do. But it doesn't feel that way on screen. It feels like the grandfather and the grandson are scripted.
I'll tell you, the last time I watched that movie, I had an epiphany about where the kid's father is. And because the grandfather says, when I was sick, my father read this to me when I was sick, and I used to read it to your father, and now I'm going to read it to you. And where's it? Shouldn't his father be reading it to him?
Yeah,
maybe his father's not there. What if his father and mother had a divorce, and the grandfather still goes and visits the home of his son, ex-wife, to be the father figure to his grandson because the dad's not in the picture.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
just had a little moment and I just went, oh my God, that's what's going on. Anyway.
That is one of the things that was a change from the book to the film. And both the screenplay and the novel were written by the same guy. So that was an adaptation that he chose to make it the grandfather be the storyteller.
Yeah.
I like it better, certainly.
Yeah, because the father's very technical in the book.
Okay, so I feel like we've got that conversation kind of nailed down. We can we can write specifics whenever, but I feel like that's where the conversation should go.
No, I think we got everything we need.
Okay.
Is there any what's the exchange look like to introduce us back to Elrond?
Elrond could be in the middle of doing something. That could be the reason why Lesson's not in the library today, that Elrond has to be outside, I don't know, doing something leader-like, I don't know, counting horses. I have no idea.
With somebody. He could be meeting with somebody. Yeah,
so there could be other people there he's talking with and be like, oh great, now that Estelle's here, let's go off and do our own thing. We're good. He dismisses the other people and turns to Estelle, but it's clear that he has other things on his plate.
He does have this huge household to run.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And his wife's gone, so he has to do it all by himself. Poor guy.
This is women's work, but my wife's gone, so I'll just lower myself.
My wife was sad to stay with me, so...
Okay, let's not introduce any of that. Sorry I even said that.
That's not right.
My wife was too sad to stay with me, so she left.
No, this is not something you repeat around 10-year-old Estelle.
Yeah. I don't know if I like him being really busy while starting the story. He should be focused on what he's doing.
He should finish and get rid of whatever his other task was before he turns to Estelle.
Yeah.
He should be focused.
Let's think in terms of what time of the year we're in, right? We're pushing towards spring, or Is it summer? When do the dwarves actually show up in Imladris?
Okay.
It's in.
Oh, that's a good question.
They're gonna get to Erebor in fall, right? Because
Yeah.
Soren's Day is in the fall.
I believe they spend. It's the beginning of summer, and they spend like. Is it the middle of summer?
Yeah, because
They
they think
spend summer. It's like 3 weeks to get through to the other side of the Misty Mountains, and then it's like a month and change to get to the other side of Mirkwood.
There's actually probably...
Bilbo's birthday, September 22nd, is when they arrive in Lake Town, like the Thank You Very Much story. So,
Right.
So that's September. So they had to have been in Rivendell, and they were in May. They were walking through the rain and everything, right? In the troll shawls. So it's early summer. It's June.
Days to get to Rivendell.
Anyway, I think they're in Rivendell about June-ish.
June, yeah, like the first sort of.
And we don't get to do that until episode 12.
Yeah.
So that means it's January, at least, at best. Right?
Well, not necessarily. We don't have to. We don't have to say that it's a week between, it's exactly a week between episodes, or it's exactly a month.
Also, his birthday, Estelle's birthday, is March 1st.
Okay.
So we can even mention it having. Well, I'm saying if his birthday happens, we can say he turns 10 this year. You know what I mean? Like that can happen in an episode, just to establish.
Yeah. I feel like it's basically January. I feel like January is the perfect place to start.
Okay, so it's not green and growing.
Yeah.
This is not Rivendell in spring.
Right. Or I guess it could be the tail end of winter. That would be okay too. The Elvish New Year, was it a Lunar New Year? No, right? It was.
Oh, that's April 6th or 7th.
Okay. So I sort of almost lunar. Bizarre 2 months after Lunar New Year for some reason.
They may start their year on a different premise, because we start our year on the premise of the
seasons.
Yeah, the winter solstice. So our year starts around the same time that it starts to warm up.
Mm.
Right.
Right, the whole March 21st thing. Yeah.
Right. So then, so maybe like February or January, February. That's the basics that we're going with.
Okay. So things should be cold, not growing. We can have evergreens and snow on the ground, maybe.
So then we can't have those cool indoor-outdoor sets for Rivendell that they had in the films.
So we have to have some doors that close.
Because otherwise Estelle would clearly freeze to death. The elves would probably be fine. Estelle and Gilroy will not.
No, elves eventually freeze to death too.
Yeah, but it's not...
It's not the same. Yeah, Tuor and Varanwe have that conversation about basically which one of them is going to starve to death in the wilderness first, and it's like, Tuor, it's you.
There's no way.
Sorry, buddy. Hate to break it to you.
Yeah, but because Varanwe has like his emergency stash of Lembas with him.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is like, for the uttermost need in case I'm going to starve to death. So elves can starve to death in the wilderness, but after.
It's not easy.
Yeah. Tuor does first. Or would.
So, in order to avoid thorny questions about why Estelle hasn't frozen to death in the apparently very frigid halls of Imladris,
let's give them heating.
Yeah, it can be the snow is sort of melting around.
What if
it's a good place for beginners?
What if they have like a I think it would be cool, because I always imagine that I don't know why I think about this stuff, but I always imagine that the elves have a very, very good understanding of how the world works. Mm-hmm. So I feel like if they, can, like, they should be able to harness like geothermal heating in some way. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's like a
I will grant you a hot spring in Imladris, but that's about as far as we can get from
the Valley of Rivendell should be milder than the mountains around it.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So you could have snow-capped mountains, and then the valley itself maybe doesn't have snow on the ground. That's a doable thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should seem.
I definitely don't want to spend any screen time going like, check out the heating system that we invented for Imladris, right? And then we're not.
No, we're not doing that. Those have indoor plumbing too, but we're not going to show that.
But I'm also not suggesting that we show exactly how the magical toys the dwarves make work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm not. I mean, I just like hot springs. So, anytime somebody's like, "Well, it could be a hot spring," I'm like, "Yes, absolutely, it should be."
There's totally a spa in the bottom
End
of
of that
Rivendell.
discussion. Correct. And it's a Japanese style hot spring because that is the pinnacle of the expression of that sort of thing.
Okay, so we've got a hot spring. So maybe that's where we have the meeting.
So why was Elrond checking out the hot spring?
Maybe Elrond.
I came up with a neat thing that we immediately axed for episode 1, and it was the thing that got Estelle in trouble in the first place was that he went for a dip in a reflecting pool that was associated with Varda.
Oh, poor little Estelle.
Yeah, and he was dared to do it because the elves. In my purview, the especially Elladan and Elro here were a little bit more of the sort of down in the valley elves. They were a little more capricious and
Tra-la-la-lolly.
And they basically joked that he should go for a dip in it, and not knowing any better, he went for it. And they were like, "Oh no, what have you done? That's not actually what we meant." And then they scampered away into the wilderness so that they wouldn't get in trouble.
Well, it sounds like something an elf would do.
Right?
Elves are such jerks.
Certainly the Tra-la-la-lolly elves would do something like that. So yeah, I mean that I feel like that we could in an attempt to resurrect that idea, we could certainly turn it into a hot spring, but just having it be associated with the subject matter that we're trying to get at. And interestingly, I kind of think that the hot spring is a neat sort of confluence of many different Valar all at once.
Like we can have like little glowing crystals in it associated with stars.
Before we go any further, Tolkien was really careful not to give the elves any shrines.
It's not a shrine.
I know. Pool. And that's the thing, is a hot spring is just a hot spring. If you don't make a shrine out of it, then it's But if it's just a hot spring, then why can't he go swimming in it or whatever? I mean, I don't know.
I don't think it should have the appearance. Well, because that's not what it's for.
What is it for?
It's for admiring the starlight in the evening on particular months of the year. Like it should have the sickle of the Valar should be visible in it.
Okay, so this is turning into Kelazaram, Miramir.
Sort of.
Yeah.
But the elf version.
It's evocative. Yeah, it's evocative of that sort of idea.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that I'm fine with. I just want to be very careful not to have a sacred spring.
No.
It just doesn't.
It was not that it was of religious significance per se.
Right.
It's just that that's not what we do in that spring. That's not
right. Which is fine, and that idea of set apart.
Now we're not doing that. Yeah. I mean, now we're having Elrond there already.
Right.
So I wanted to teach you this lesson here because we're going to learn today about how all the different parts of the world work, and this hot spring is a good place.
This is a really good illustration.
Yeah, so it can be I think it fits here better than you have trespassed.
Here that this is necessarily of any significance. It should look extremely natural.
Yes.
And I mean, it could have prepared areas like seating and such in sort of around it. I'm thinking very Japanese gardenish, which the whole thing with Japanese garden is that there's tremendous effort expended to make it look like the entire scene is completely natural.
Yes.
Well, I think that's that's something that the elves do, is that they're able to
Yeah.
take something that is completely natural and make it suit their needs, make it do
Right.
what they need it to do.
Exactly.
Right, so that part fits. And it's also some English gardening, they do the same thing of they want it to look like wild space, so they like trim the trees to make it look like sheep ate it.
Right.
And it's like you could have
That's
okay, anyway, just
But it just
no, but I love
eat it.
Yeah, that's the spirit of it. Is that
right.
if it wasn't for the fact that this was in the middle of Imladris, we wouldn't necessarily know that it wasn't just a completely natural landscape. Right.
Right. And it should have that wild
in reverse.
That was actually one of the things that I kind of didn't like so much about the film adaptation, was that I was like, there's too much building everywhere. There's not enough open.
There are too many statues of people.
Yes, holy cow.
They're freaking everywhere. There's like a woman doing this on the bedpost. Like, come on.
So
I'm sorry. The bed that Frodo wakes up in, it has a statue on it. Like, why do you have a statue on the bed? This is not Elvish architecture. Sorry. Yeah, Rivendell should also be more wooden and less stone and more Germanic and less whatever that was. But it was also beautiful.
Greco-Roman
I always
Simple
imagine
statue.
human architecture in Middle Earth being more Germanic, whereas Elvish architecture is more Celtic. Not that the Celts had a lot of architecture. But
Celtic
what are you using for?
Well, what I'm using is their artwork.
So like Celtic scrolls everywhere. Like they're not. Yeah.
Curved
lots of intricate shapes, curved and natural.
Right.
Yeah, lots of viney looking things with leaves and dogs and such. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas the human architecture is very straight and very, plumb and very sturdy looking, and very serious.
So Gilryan, does she have like a separate little house somewhere in the Valley of Rivendell, or is she in the main house?
I feel like she has a separate house.
Okay.
It's just easier. And I feel like she would demand a separate house.
It's been 10 years. Like 8 years.
Not in the sense of like she would insist. She would insist on having a separate house.
So she lives in the guest house.
Right, yeah. Well, I'm not saying that they built her like a shanty or anything.
Does Elrond have a mother-in-law suite for Galadriel?
It's never big enough.
Of course she does. Galadriel gets her own everything.
Elrond, your trees are so tiny. Get bigger trees, Elrond? Really?
We can't all live in the enchanted valley of magic tree land. All right. So I think
you guys live in an enchanted valley.
I think yeah.
It's the enchanted valley.
It's maybe not as fancy as some other people's enchanted valleys.
It's kind of skeleton.
Yeah.
All right. So
the hot spring.
Yeah.
We can't all be old money, all right?
What do we
have to start from humbler beginnings?
What do we do?
I think we're good. I think we started well, and I think that with what the rest of what we got going on plugs in well to where we're going. This is the big hopping back and forth episode where questions kind of drive what's going, right? So we've had the establishing shot. Do we go immediately to a question, or do we spend some time with our big four that we decided are going to be the big four?
I think we should spend enough time to give the characters in the story some dialogue, and then come back to the frame. Like, if they haven't spoken yet, it's too soon to come back, in my opinion.
So then what are we talking about?
Hey, you're here too! I don't know. We're actually running into you!
Well, I think that we need to establish the relationship between... I feel like Manwë and Varda are the quickest to work together, followed very closely by Yavanna and Ale.
I have an idea about Ale and Ivana and
Okay.
working together. I don't know if it's any good, but
Okay.
it just, when they were, this is what I thought about when I listened to the episode.
Yeah.
So, like, Ivana is trying to grow stuff places, and she doesn't really understand gravity yet as well as other people might. So she's like putting trees on a mountain slope that looks like this, and of course they like forms a landslide and they come down. And
Right.
she's getting frustrated because they won't stick. And Ollie comes over and is like, "Oh, bad slope," and like, I don't know, terraces it or something for her, but somehow fixes the mountain.
What
And
if
then
she
she
also
goes-
helps her come up with roots?
Or something like together. Like he fixes the land a little bit, and she starts doing roots. Or he's
Right.
like, "You need an anchor," and she's like, "Oh, you mean like this?" And then roots happen.
Yeah.
Whatever. But somehow, I wanted
But
it
I
to be
feel like
a building issue because she's so about life and just growth, and she would not be someone who's about technical details, and he's all technical stuff. So somewhere where it can be
I feel like that's
an
kind
engineer.
of goofy, though. Like,
Hmm?
I don't want to see. I don't really want to see the Valar learning how physics work per se.
Oh,
It
like
is.
physics.
It's an okay metaphor for that they don't quite get each other yet, but it's just so dang goofy. Like,
well, there
it
needs
doesn't.
to be conflict before we see them working together anyway.
Like, I would prefer them to be getting sort of on each other's nerves with what they're doing rather than be like, I don't understand gravity, right? Like, that's just such a goofy idea.
Well,
Okay.
let's
Sorry.
start with our obvious conflict spots.
That works so much better for the flash animation idea. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Like, there's jokes there, and it's silly and goofy and hilarious. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying it doesn't
fit. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily think that I think there's definitely stuff we can work with there, but I also think that we need to see conflict before we see unity.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the beginnings.
Because otherwise we have no arc.
Yeah, the inklings of conflict. Yeah, sure.
So, like, and like our first obvious source of that is Aule and Ulmo.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could start there if we wanted to.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. Is there any other? I mean, I feel like Aule and Yavanna can even like. There's issues there because like she could build this field. She could make this field with all of this green stuff, and then Aule comes along and just bulldozes a mountain into like over the space where she just put a meadow.
Right. He is kind of the mining company, and she would not like that.
Yeah. No. Who else?
Uh-oh. There we go. Sorry.
Mhm.
I'm supposed to wake up now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, glad you're awake. Sorry you had to wake up so early.
So we've got who else?
Well, let's focus on the four because that's where we're starting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, who do you want to see fighting first, Aule and Yavanna, or Aule and I'd rather see Aule and Ulmo fighting, which I hate to take a moment away from a woman, especially in Tolkien, but I like the clash between. It's a little more primordial, I think.
Well, yeah, clearly.
You know, this is the beginning of creation, like on the first day kind of stuff. Like that's starting with water and rock is where else
I
are you?
also don't want to show a bickering couple. Like,
Yeah.
I want to be like, you just, like,
Well, I
Aule
feel like the fact
described this kind of an
the reason that I
insensitive
like
guy.
the Aule Yavanna thing is because it gives us an immediate arc because they wind up working more closely together than anybody else, with the exception of Manwë and Varda.
until the
dwarves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes that an interesting wrinkle in their relationship. Yeah,
No, I think that if we start with Varda and the stars, and then switch to Aule versus Ulmo in conflict, then that leaves the opportunity to bring Yavanna in next.
Yeah,
And then it doesn't feel like we're doing all the guys first, then all the girls later, just as an afterthought.
Oh yeah, no. Varda, we
That
definitely
means
need.
that he. So
Right, but my point is,
like,
it's more than that.
If we're going from a POV of Manwë, then we definitely are meeting Arda first.
Right. So then the transition is we can see the stars first, and then that's where his little helicopter ride ends. He
sees the stars starting to pop up, and he goes to check out what.
No. He sees the stars when he's coming in at the very beginning when he's
okay,
still over
all right.
the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where his journey ends. Is after he's kind of done his flyby of whoever we're gonna fly by.
Mm-hmm.
He lands next to Varda, and she's like, "What do you think?" And he's like, "Yeah, I like it. It's doing good. Certainly easier to see now."
I can totally see oh my god, that's it. And he's like, yeah, I can totally see everything.
Mm-hmm. And she's like, yes, but I can hear everything. No, we can't work that in.
Well, not yet.
Well, they're not on Tentaquetl yet, so it's not.
I know.
But he can totally be like, man, like it was. I didn't realize how dark it was until it wasn't dark anymore. Like something similar.
Well,
crazy.
And also because he's with Varda, she could potentially hear because he just did a flyby of Olmo and Aule. And now she could potentially hear a conflict between the two of them.
And we go to that.
Yeah. There you go.
And she'd be like, hey,
what are they talking about?
You want to get that?
Yeah.
This is your job, right?
Right. So what are they talking about before they hear the conflict going on? They get down. He's like, man, I didn't realize how awesome everything was until you lit it up. Thanks for that. That was great.
Yeah. I feel like
it was awesome, but it's even more awesome. You know?
Yeah.
I
feel like
there could be but there's so much work still to do, or like something of wow, this is great, but we've only just started.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Do you want to have any references to anybody else that we haven't seen yet?
Who's left? We have Nessa, we have Orome, we have Este.
No, Este's going to be with Lorian.
Oh, yeah, not Este. Vanna.
Vanna, the ever young.
Yes.
I know I'm sideways now, but I need to charge this thing. So
you're getting a little sideways.
I'm just going to be sideways for the rest of this. We're almost done anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like that conversation doesn't need to be super long. There's not a lot.
What are we trying to establish with it?
We're trying to establish that Manwë certainly that Manwë and Varda are
on the same page.
Yeah, like they're getting each other.
So he compliments her work. She should acknowledge his leadership role if she's going to send off to take care of things, and like.
Yeah.
I don't want to have her curtsy or anything. Though.
No, I wasn't suggesting that.
Yeah, but she basically says when she hears the conflict between Aule and Olmo, she basically is like,
our brethren are
you gonna
not working in harmony?
Are you going to take care of that, or you know? So she acknowledges that
this in the kingdom of Manwë.
Right.
All right. So then we have our little spat between Aule and Olmo. It shouldn't be like the only one that I think Olmo should be openly hostile towards would be Melkor. Like I want that to be a real.
Well, this is more of like two kids who aren't, like there's no malice there. They're just
right.
Like you can be mad at somebody and not
even like irritation. I think should be kind of subdued.
Well, if it's
someone stepped in your territory, so it's wait a second. I thought that was what I was
right.
doing.
It's like when a cold
I just took care of that.
Something, yeah.
This is like the kids tracking mud through the house. Like, I just cleaned the floor. Like, that's what this is.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not like you're mad at the kids. You just wish they
Right.
wouldn't track mud through the house.
I just really just did that, like right now. Can you please?
Yes.
Many pleases.
Yeah. So it's frustration of not communicating before they do stuff.
Right.
So they keep stepping on each other's toes and getting each other's way, and Ale can mess up on it.
Are there like attendant spirits still? Are there kind of like lesser little glowy lights that don't really say anything kind of floating around?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I feel like we can even see their faces without it.
Without,
Yeah, but they just don't have dialogue yet. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the background, kind of work continues on the mountain, and then as the work continues on the mountain, the ocean is eroding it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, that works for me.
And then Aule, keeps dumping, sees that the ocean is eroding it, so he dumps more rock on there. And Elmo is like, hey, I just put that there. Can you not?
I think they should be arguing, and in the background, the work is being done by their attendant spirits, sort of heedless of what the other attendant spirits are doing.
So it's Ase and Unin on Almo's side, and it's Myron and yeah. So and Saruman are on Ale's side. So we'll see those faces later. So they're there and they're doing their thing, but.
Right. Oh man, that's a really good point. Now that you mention it, like there's actually people that we can show that are going to be important people later in those two camps. So
yes,
that's a good opportunity to get them some face time.
Right.
All right. So then we have the conflict, and the conflict is resolved because Manway is an awesome boss.
Mm-hmm. Then I think to show the arc of where, like, because Manway just kind of shows up and it's like, all right, you stay over here, you stay over here.
No, because that's too bossy, right?
But it's in the interest of compromise. He works it out between them, but they're not working together yet.
Yeah.
Okay. When I feel like
here, you know what I think Manway's angle would be is the first sort of attempt at the mountain is kind of blocky and not really naturally very gorgeous. And then the ocean comes in and kind of sweeps a bunch of it away, and Ale is like, this is not right. This is not what I had in mind.
Yeah.
And then as he comes up to them, they're arguing, and he's like, what's the deal? And they're like, well, he keeps screwing up my mountain. And he's like, well, he keeps screwing up my coastline. Like, this is not
right.
This is not what was in the music.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And as they kind of go back to arguing amongst themselves, and he's just kind of looking at what is happening to the mountain. And as it becomes sort of more naturally beautiful, because I don't want to do the thing where like everything is perfect geometric shapes.
No.
But I think we could do it a very tiny bit here, and it wouldn't look horrible. And if we establish very quickly that the natural beauty of Arda is coming from this sort of
the
back and
interactions
forth on these boundaries, that would be kind of a neat thing to do. So if we see exactly one, and it doesn't have to be like perfect conical shapes of mountains. No, it doesn't have to be, but just kind of two perfect edges.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, also, I feel like the way that we're able to kind of wrap up how they've started work together is the Yavanna Aule angle, because at first they don't seem to really they're as mismatched as Hephaestus and Aphrodite. They don't seem like they're a thing. It doesn't make sense.
Right, necessarily. But here in this argumentative moment, I think his interruption is, guys, look at this. Look at what the interplay between you two has wrought. And they turn around and it's this really gorgeous, cliffscape, and they're like, oh man.
Well, I feel like that moment but I feel like if we do that, we're going to be doing that again with Melkor. We're going to have that same moment again.
Sort of, but Melkor's the angle is different. Melkor is trying to dominate, right?
Hang on, there's a huge train running by, and I can't hear anything you're saying.
People that don't understand each other's boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
The angle with Melkor is he doesn't care about other people's boundaries. He's actively trying to push himself into other people's areas, right?
Right.
So I don't think that reiteration is necessarily. It's certainly not useless, right? It's a different angle of the same problem. Okay. And the difference is the intent, right? The difference is how they're approaching it, right? And the result is not totally different. The result is actually fairly similar because it has to be, because that's the world that Tolkien built specifically, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, like that's a perfect moment to go back to that conflict and say, and this is why Melkor is the bad guy. I think it's illustrative.
What if we put that realization into hang on, this train is ridiculous. There's a train track that runs basically right behind my house, and at night ginormous freight trains come through, and there's like 25, 50 cars just forever. It's been going for like the past 3 minutes, and I can't hear anything. And
if it makes you feel any better, I can't hear that over the.
Well, that's good. So that means that the mic on this is actually very, very well made.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully.
So what if we put that realization? What if Manwë works it out? You know, he gets them to not put their peanut butter in the other's chocolate, but.
No, but he wants them putting peanut butter.
Yeah, no, I get it, but he doesn't want them. He doesn't want them fighting with each other.
Yeah.
Right. So it has to be this is your thing, this is your thing. You need to work out where the boundary is, but there's going to be a boundary.
That's the point, right? That's
what if because we haven't even done anything with Yavanna. What if we go back then and show Yavanna and Ali have the same thing happen? The same exact thing happens again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she could probably come up and be like, no, that seems.
Well, this time they work it out between the two of them, where they wind up working together. They collaborate on like root structure. You know, they collaborate on that, and so you know, Yavanna's plants are now better because she's working together with Ale, and albums now look 10 times more awesome because there's plants on them.
That seems like a natural progression of
and then
the same sort of thing.
And then Yavanna turns around and said, you know, by the way, I like what you and Ulmo, you know, is this what you and Ulmo did with the coastline?
Mm-hmm.
And Ale turns around and looks at, and then we get that moment. He goes, "Oh, we totally did that by accident. Like, okay, we can we'll do that from now on. Yeah, that's perfect."
Because the coastline between Ale and Ase anyway is going to be an ongoing issue.
Yeah.
Like Ase's going to keep
so the way that
stepping
I see
down.
the progression then is it starts off with, and I think Manwë should be fairly passive in all this because he kind of is a passive guy. So he comes in and is like, "What's the problem?" And they, you know, pitch their fits at him like he's getting his chocolate and my peanut butter. He's getting my peanut butter and his chocolate. I really like that metaphor. It's really funny. And then Yavanna comes in and is like, "I need your help. I can't figure this out. This isn't working right."
So she basically pulls Ale out of
well, not necessarily out of the fight, but she comes in and says like, "Look, something isn't working right, and I can't figure it out, and makes it about let's figure out this problem.
Which is like Owlie's a crafter. That's a thing for him.
Right. Or
I like it. I think that's great. And you can see her kind of like, what did I do? And like a plant grows up.
So she's not pissed. She's not necessarily cranky in the same way that Alma has been cranky. She's like, I can't figure this out. This isn't working the way it's supposed to work, and I have no idea. And Manway's like, all right, well,
watch this. And a plant grows up and immediately falls over. Yeah, right.
And so Manway's like, well, let's put our heads together. What can Owlie, what is the problem here? And he's like, well, it seems like it needs more at the bottom, right? Like, because his whole thing is mountains with huge bases, right?
Right. Yeah.
So he's like, it seems to me like it needs more at the bottom. Like you're putting, it's too tall and too much at the top and not enough underneath.
Top heavy.
And which is
because if you look at trees, if you don't know about roots, trees totally look like they should just fall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if you don't know anything. If you were a brand new human being, you looked at a tree, you'd be like, how is this thing
staying what is the deal here? This is amazing. Like the wind blows and it doesn't fall over. This is incredible, right?
Yeah.
And so, he's like, so that's Owlie's contribution. And then they go through the process of trial and error and they figure out roots. And, almost kind of there in the background, hanging out, being sulky, like, keeps looking back at the ocean, like shaking his head, because the work on the mountains and the ocean hasn't stopped because nobody's told anybody to stop, right?
Right.
And then she's like, "Man, this is so great! I can do so much with this. This is going to be awesome. Thank you guys so much for helping me with this. I really like what you and Olmo have done
over there."
And then they all kind of do the turnaround to this new, cliffscape.
Yeah.
Fjords.
Yeah, or the Seven Sisters, or like any kind of British coastline that has amazing cliffs.
Yeah,
would be perfect.
Cliffs of Moher.
And then they're kind of like, oh wow, let's just keep doing this.
We'll do that. We'll just do that.
Yeah, this is working really well.
And Manway just kind of looks over at them like. What do you think?
Anybody is anything and anything. Chocolate and peanut butter were meant to be together from the beginning.
They were.
It's true.
So we are showing Alla and Ivana becoming a couple in this scene, kind of, but not.
Sort of.
Like, how explicit do we want to make that?
Working together more closely, and from now on, we will see them.
Okay, so we'll continue to see them together, and maybe eventually people will figure out that they actually are together.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. We start to see them living in the same spaces, that always kind of like I was actually working this out because I was like doing some work trying to figure out what their individual domiciles look like in Almarin. And I started thinking about Owlie and Ivana. I was like, how on earth does that work? So I came up with this idea of this big like banyan tree that is Ivana's house. And then if you go into the basement, you go way, 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 way down this.
Let's get the forge.
And there's Owlie's forge way down there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, pretty much all the Legolas Gimli material would be demonstrating the issue between them. Legolas is all about trees, and Gimli's like, you have to see these awesome caves, and yeah. Okay, so with Varda and Manwë, though, they're much more obviously a couple, a team from the very beginning of this, right?
They can't even do like Varda can't make the stars anywhere else.
Yeah,
like they
she tried them.
And when we see, because we need to see them as a strong unit, because in the very next episode, we're going to see Melkor make a play for her.
Right.
So we need to see that they're on the same page.
Already.
They're together.
Yeah. Okay.
You know.
All right. So do we need to cut back and forth to Estelle during any of this?
I think this, at the end of this sort of exchange, is sort of a good opportunity to ask a question. So what is the first question?
I don't know. Because
What's the next thing that we need to know?
An hour of television. I don't know, because I have a sneaking suspicion that we may have actually just created an hour of television.
I sincerely doubt it.
Nah, this doesn't go that.
We've done
okay.
maybe
All right.
5 minutes.
We've only had like 3 separate conversations happen in the storyline.
Yeah.
And yes, there's been some sweeping establishing shots, but like the actual...
Okay, you're right. Right. So, but what do we ask? Because we just, like, the problem is we basically just created an arc. So we might have to cut into the middle of it.
It's a small arc, though. Like,
it's a small
So do we have to cut in before Yavanna?
It's the arc for their story in this episode.
It's here's the arc for me for the whole, like, the introduction of Melkor into this whole mess is kind of where we're driving towards. And I don't really think that we can wait till the very end and then be like, and then Melkor came down.
But did he? Did they? I thought we weren't having him appear in Arda until the end of episode 3.
So
episode 4.
Episode 3 ends with him deciding to come to Arda.
That is a long 2 episodes with no. Well, okay, episode 1 has.
I'm just saying, episode 3 is supposed to end with Melkor entering into Arda, but no one knows he's there yet, except possibly the Balrogs. I forget if they came to greet him or something. But the idea was that episode 4 is introducing him to the other Valar. Yeah. Like, oh, you're here too, is episode 4. So.
Anybody else? No, he comes after. Right? That was part of the whole thing, that he's a latecomer.
Who is?
He was a latecomer like Tulkas.
He doesn't come now until episode 5?
Right. And Tulkas will come the next episode to be like, see, sometimes when people are latecomers, it's a good thing.
Right. I mean, we can still end episode 3 with Melkor arriving in Arda, because episode 3 is all about Melkor in the void.
Yeah.
And the flame imperishable. So to me, it makes sort of sense to wrap up his little everything with that, all of his flashbacks and whatnot. But God, really, we're gonna wait until episode 4 to have any Melkor?
Yeah, no, that's definite. That is absolutely definite.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what the heck we're.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, we're leaving all of the Valar for an entire episode for episode 3, except for Varda.
So, what is this episode about then? Because you're right. If that is the way I had it in my head, was we do sort of Manwë doing his thing successfully, and then we show the Melkor version of that, which doesn't end so well. That was the only thing that really made sense to me in terms of.
We're going to see it end pretty well in episode 4.
Because they're going to do the lamp.
What?
Because they're going to decide to do the lamps.
Yeah, they're going to decide to build.
Yeah, but it doesn't. Not necessarily that. Well, and the lamps, but the lamps themselves are not really necessarily a good thing, right? Especially
there's
version that we have decided to tell.
We're not entirely. No, nobody's really sure about that. We'll get there when we get there. But
I don't know. I like the angle of the hoarding angle of the lamps, as you know. This was a good impulse, but ultimately flawed in its conception.
Well, I feel that we can cut away at different moments in the. I feel like the story that we've told in Arda at this point in unmarred Arda.
Mm-hmm.
If we do enough of it, it's sufficient for us to carry the episode there. What we need is more frame. We need.
So here's a question. So when we first cut back to the frame, Estelle can be putting together what he's talking about with looking at the hot spring. Like, oh, so you mean like how the water and all the different colors around the rocks, like he can tie in because he's like, clearly we're having this lesson here for a reason. Let me try to connect them because I'm going to be a smart student. Because I feel like he'd be a smart kid, right?
Yes.
So he could try to pull that together and try and explain what Elrond was saying, and then bring up another aspect of Arda that they haven't seen the Valafor yet. I don't know what he can bring up.
If we ended the previous episode with Aya let these things be, we haven't necessarily explained exactly what that means, right?
Well,
we
did was, I don't know if you watched the last 2 minutes of the video. Okay, yeah,
of that 4-hour video.
Yeah,
I was doing many.
Well, that's why I really kind of want to limit this one in length because it was nobody's gonna watch a 4-hour long video.
Chinese New Year things with families, so they have a lot of free time.
Yeah. So, what we can do is that at the end of the episode we pull out into the frame, and so it's pretty simple. Estelle's like, so that's how all this stuff was made, and Elrond says, well, no, they had a lot more work to do than that. It was, it wasn't that simple.
I think that's a good cliff. That's a good hook to end on.
Right, and so that's what we're doing now. Now we're here, and so I feel like Estelle can do that again. He can be like, so how the Earth is able to heat the water or something like that. And and Elrond says, well, no, because they still needed to learn how to work together. So
So the angle is at the very beginning that the Earth has to be. That was the Valar went into the Earth and there was nothing, right? And so this would be the voiceover period where we come in on a black screen and then it slowly starts to look like water, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Or maybe it doesn't have to be voiceover. It could be.
I think we can go with just nothing, with no other than rushing wind or something like that to illustrate the fact that we're flying with Manwë.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In the awesome eagle-like form
that would be where I would
created for him, which was fantastic.
He can say. At the end of the last lesson, you said that, that wasn't the beginning, right?
Yeah.
The beginning, that's not the beginning. And then he can elaborate. He'd be like, well, okay, so what I meant was that they came into Arda and there was nothing. And they had to build it.
Mm-hmm. And so then we see the establishing shot.
Right.
We see the conversation between Varda and Manwë.
Mm-hmm.
She says something to the effect of, she hears Omo and Aule going at it, and she says, hey, you want to go do something about that? And Manwë looks down, and you can see, I even in my head, I picture mountains of earth and water just kind of pushing against each other. Because now they're in full on
waves, kind of
crush. So, and then we cut back to the frame.
Okay, so
and I think it would be good. I think it would actually be good for him to ask about because we're seeing this fairly violent scene of mountains of earth and tsunamis kind of pushing against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And he can just ask, so they were fighting with each other? Is that what was happening?
Yeah. and have Elrond explain, well, the eel doesn't get her.
Yeah.
I'm explaining it to you because you look nervous. Yeah.
he can kind of.
I had to make sure I got my friend the fire extinguisher.
Maybe we could have some puppies like kind of play fighting with each other. I don't know. Like I was gonna say that he can be like, yeah, you know how siblings kind of, you know.
Right, but you're
And
right.
Estelle's like, no, I don't.
No, I don't. Poor Estelle, only child, no father. Wow.
It'd be the worst possible thing you could say to somebody like Estelle.
No, I don't think. I don't feel like Elrond's that clueless.
Yeah.
Oh,
Although,
what if Aladan didn't leave, and maybe Elrond was with Elro here. Okay.
Okay,
so when
that's what I was talking about.
There's a scene where we introduce Elro here. So now Elro here and Eladan are
there you go.
Are both there, and so Elrond can refer to his sons being young and play fighting with each other.
Young, 4,000 years young.
You know, when they were only a couple of hundred years old.
Yeah.
Right. So do we want it to be a thing where Elrond says, well, you know, sometimes people aren't really fighting, but they still don't get along because they both are trying to do the same thing in the same space, and care to elaborate on this, young boys who are like 3,000 years old. And then they get to tell a story of, hey, yeah, remember that time you blah, blah, blah?
Yeah.
Like, do we want them to tell their own story?
I don't know if I want to get into another story, like a story.
A story within a story.
Yeah, that's what I was questioning where we were going. How far?
Maybe they could say something to the effect of, like, Dad, that was 2,000 years ago. Can you let it go, please? You know, like, obviously not in so many words, but something to that effect.
We can get the same thing without any dialogue from Eladan and Elro here. We can show them just kind of like, you know, kind of pushing and shoving each other playfully. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's enough for me. Where we're like, well, you know, I mean, even the best of brothers, even identical twins, can't always get along perfectly the way that they maybe want to.
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of show them, you know, shoving each other and being silly. Like, to me, they're helping sort of clean or maintain the space that they're in while he's telling the story, because that's what he was in there in the first place for, right? He's kind of doing general gardening maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if they're hanging around, I feel like the thing that they need to be doing is kind of, you know, helping Dad get ready for whatever night viewing.
They got their little pruning shears out and are going through and making things look natural.
And he's like, you're doing that wrong. It's like, you don't know. This is my thing. Go do your thing. Something like that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Sort of, I like it.
Yeah.
They could actually get in each other's way at that moment. And we could,
Right, and we can just look at them and be like, yeah.
Exactly, right?
Like that. Just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
See, that's good. That works real good.
Okay.
And I like that we're introducing Eladan and Elro here before we have them be like, they are great warriors who are going to teach Estelle how to sword play. Like,
giving them anything else besides what is in the books would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Because they're just, I don't know, super one-dimensional. Like, the thing I hate about the elves in Lord of the Rings is how one-dimensional they have the space to be.
Well, you have to really dig into the story.
Yeah, there's no room for them
to see it.
There isn't any room.
Something blue.
So, all right, cool. So then we go back to the problem. I don't know. I'm having a lot of difficulty.
We go back to
that sort of exchange into an hour's worth of television. What else can we interject the frame into?
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe we need to have a discussion. We need to have a discussion between Elrond and Estelle. What are they talking about other than that?
Their initial problems, in part because he has no one to have problems with, because he is alone, all alone. Boo-hoo.
Right. Yeah.
What else? What else might he not understand?
Whoa. What if he does use them as an example, but then he takes them because they're in the garden, right? And he shows him two plants that are kind of infringing on each other's space, and he shows how they have to be kind of pruned and guided so that he does like a little bit of Mr. Miyagi-ing with him, to kind of, showing how they need to be pruned and guided so that they look great together, but they don't interfere with each other. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. Because we have to expand that conversation. It's got to last at least 5 minutes.
Screen time for that conversation.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think the entire project is going to suffer from a few too many people standing around talking about stuff scenes. So anytime we can get people doing something.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the problem. Okay, so let's block this out real quick. All right, we have the introductory scene. We have maybe 3 minutes before he actually gets to the hot spring with Eladan. Maybe another 2 to 3 minutes before Elrond, before we go into Arda, which is not a lot of time. We're talking about maximum 10 minutes before we get to Arda. We have the establishing shot, which is maybe a minute. It's not you can't hold somebody's attention for much longer than that on a single shot.
Yeah, agreed.
But that doesn't have something happening in it. We have the exchange with Varda.
Couple minutes again. Yeah.
That's maybe 2 to 3 minute exchange. All right. So now we're 15 minutes in.
Way to go. I sure hope we have commercials.
Right. So
all right, so
okay. So for 15 minutes in, now the exchange between the situation between Aule and Omo, we can show that happening for a good 5 to 10 minutes. Between the conversation and the stuff that we show on screen, we can have that take a good chunk of time. Not a lot, but the conversation between Yavanna and Aule when they work out how roots work, that could take about 10 to 15 minutes.
There's no way that is going to take.
No, you don't think so?
I can't even imagine how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it almost has to be not in real time, or else it's going to be ridiculous.
The only thing that I can really see is Aule saying it's too top heavy. You need something underneath.
Well, what if first we show that he tries to make? He says, "Well, what if you bury it in a mound of dirt?" And so you see this tree just sticking out of this mound of dirt, and just the branches sticking out on top. And Yavanna's like, "No, that's not."
Come to the answer quickly, or else they start looking like buffoons. Again, that is perfect for the flash animation, and completely inappropriate for the actual thing. Right? I'm telling you, somebody find an animator, because there's so much comedy gold to be had here. Has anybody ever watched Carbot animations? They do Blizzard knockoff cartoons. They're hilarious. Don't worry about it. So Yeah, like I can't. He like Aule very quickly figures out what the problem is because he knows all about gravity, and it's of course the answer is the base has to be wider because that's mountains and that's everything that he knows everything about. So yeah, Aule figures it out very quickly. Look, the problem is it's too top heavy and the base is not big enough. And she, we could try like above ground roots. And she's like, so it needs to kind of be like this. And he's like, not exactly what I had in mind. Why don't you go under? And then she gets the roots down, and she's like, oh my gosh, this works so well. Great. And that's it. Like, there's nothing else there. Expanding that any further is.
Well, she's got to show
there's going to be a little bit of a look at this thing, but even so, it's not going to take 10 minutes
that's 5 seconds of him kind of humming and hawing and
all right,
looking
so
at it. It's more than 5 seconds of screen time.
And then they have to show the coastline and whatnot. I'd like to have an establishment shot of the beginning of the construction of Almora.
That's kind of how this is all supposed to end. That's what's supposed to happen at the last third of this episode.
Right. So how do we get to that?
Right. How do we get from?
Well, I mean, I'm talking about just time blocking at the moment.
Right, but there's no transition.
Then let's go back to the scene. So we're 15 minutes in. Then we have.
So we basically need like 3 5-minute blocks in the frame right now.
That's standard for TV scenes, more or less.
Yeah.
So from where we were at 15 minutes we got to the problem of, Aule and
people who love each other.
And we've taught the audience to eat prune trees in the wintertime.
Right. I think that we could elaborate where we see the shot of Eladan and Elrohir kind of joshing each other, and then because he has no frame of reference to understand that, he says, "Well, I don't exactly get what you're saying," and then he can give
his mother and him
the pruning metaphor where he's like, "Take a look at these 2 plants, right? This plant is growing over, and he's going to choke this other plant out if we don't, right? But if we do it this way, then they blend together really well, and it's,
What if we?
But that's still only like.
What if we can expand on that? Because I feel like the elves wouldn't just keep these 2 plants away from each other. They would find a way for the 2 plants to grow.
So if one of the plants is a vine, it needs another plant to grow on. So it could be like, see, this is a vine, and this is great, but it needs a base, and that's what this main tree is serving. Is the vine is growing on this other tree, so they need.
And I feel like that this is good because it also ties in with the Yavanna Aule moment too.
A minute of screen time though, like it
I know.
go on longer than that.
But I feel like we're going to get there afterwards. We're going to get there, like he can't get it too quickly. He can't understand how they need to work together.
Have them starting to have that's when Yavanna shows up and does her little exchange. And then we come back again where he's like, I'm not sure I'm getting this. And then he's like, okay, look, if you let the vine grow on the ground unchecked, it covers everything and nothing can grow, right? But if you allow it to use the other trees as a base, et cetera, and then it's much more beautiful, et cetera. Okay.
Right.
So for a vine, are we thinking ivy, or is this some other kind of vine? The only reason I ask is because ivy can kill the tree.
Well, yeah. Clematis is another one that can do that.
Doesn't kill the tree.
Right. So we want something that's very much a good symbiotic relationship, not a tree killer. Okay, I'll see if I can find a vine that works.
Yeah. Okay.
No. I'll tell you what. That can still be part of the thing, right? The ivy has to be checked.
Oh.
It doesn't just magically work.
Is maybe maybe one of the twins is pruning trees and the other twin is like ripping down vines.
Yeah, taking down ivy. Or cutting back ivy, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you let it, the ivy will overwhelm, right? And you're still not done, right? If you're not paying attention, the ivy will overwhelm, and especially for an elf, that would be in the blink of an eye, right? If you don't,
you have to do this every year. It's really important. If you let it go for 10, 20, 100 years, just think about that.
You can't like come back 20 years later. What you left.
Now,
these change very quickly. You know how it is.
I apologize for this tangent. This is probably the wrong place for it, but Elrond has the ring Vilya, which is air.
Yeah.
Which gives the Rivendell the magical air that it has that is very, rejuvenating and everything. But Manwë being air.
And mild the weather.
Yeah. Right. But Manwë being associated with air, Elrond kind of also being should we use that at any time?
I don't know if we should play that card yet because nobody.
We certainly should not do it explicitly, but should there be some comment about Manwë and air that Elrond says something kind of insightful that's just like,
If you can write one, sure.
Yeah, I'll think about it. That's not easy, but I just realized that needs to happen at some point.
I can't work it in this moment very organically off the top of my head, so.
Yeah. Well, we're looking for things to put in the frame.
The ring will not be seen.
Yeah. Well, right now we're missing about 10 minutes.
I still think we're missing 30 minutes.
Well, we have to do Almiron. Almiron's going to take some time.
So that's another 5 minutes.
Well, that's I was counting on. Well, okay. What if we cut back to the frame after the whole bit of after the whole bit about the trees and all that? What if we come back to Arda? I know they're both stories are in Arda, but for some reason we're calling old Arda. We come back to Arda, and Manwë's calling everybody together. I have a project for us all to do together. It's going to be great. And that's when they make Almiron, and you see.
I like where you're going. So that would be that is the question. So they just worked together really well after that. They figured it out.
No, but what I'm saying, we'll still.
So after that initial fight, they all kind of got it, and he's like, "Well, not exactly." And then we cut back to, like you said, Manwë. Manwë is very excited about the trees and the coastline. Right? He's very excited.
Right.
And he calls everybody together, and he says, "I have an idea. We have been working sort of alone, and it's going okay. But this epiphany that we just had with Olmo and Varda or Yavanna and Aule has made me realize that we're not
reaching our full potential as a company.
Music. We're missing the key thing about the music, which was all of us singing together, right, in harmony." So I want to let's try it. Let's all try to work on a localized project together and see what happens.
Yeah, and then we can just do that everywhere.
Exactly.
But like Almiron, like the folk, like the test bed, like the
this is
pilot project.
This is his whole impulse. This is Manwë's whole thing. He wants to get everybody together and do things small, right? And when things start getting out of control, he's like, okay, we lost our focus. That was the problem.
Yeah.
Let's go to Valinor and try it again, right? And then
For Almarin,
so
like
he wants to start everybody together in Almarin and then work their way outwards, basically.
Right. So we've introduced it, but not everyone's gonna instantly get on board with him. So they'll be like, "Yeah, this sounds like a great idea." And you know what Almarin should look like? It should look exactly like my part.
Yeah.
So, like at first, like when they agree, yeah, let's do this, and they come together, and you get like a bigger version of the Ale Olmo on the seashore conflict because they're now all stepping on everybody's toes.
Right.
This will take more than 10 minutes to resolve. Haha! I've solved our problem by giving us a bigger problem.
Okay. That you have kind of how do we resolve it?
I have no idea. Talk with yourselves.
How do we fix that? Now that you've gone, we had everything tied up in a nice little package, and you went and broke it. How do we fix it?
Okay.
What are the so he brings everybody together, and he has the conversation. Before we actually transition to Almarin specifically, let's give our people that time to show who they are. You know,
right? Okay.
Yavanna and Ale are like, yes, absolutely. This is totally great.
Mm-hmm.
We just saw it happen, and it was fantastic. And almost like, I mean, it was good, but I've got all this other stuff going on over here. I don't know I'm not sure.
I don't know if I have the time.
Yeah. It's like I've got all of this. You guys don't even know. You have no idea all of the things that are, going on up in this unfathomable brain.
Olmo is the opposite of a joiner. He's going to tolerate the idea because he thinks Manway's a good guy, but he's not.
I mean, it should be very obvious that Olmo and Manway are bros, but
yes.
Olmo is not sure, right? He's like, I hear what you're saying. It sounds like a good idea, but I've got all this other stuff going on. Like, I don't know, right? And then
I'll send a representative.
I'll send somebody.
I'll send my minions over. They'll help you out. You've got some streams and stuff, right? We can do streams. Waterfalls can happen. Almarin can have waterfalls in it, and Rivendell has waterfalls in it.
That would be cool. And
waterfalls are always cool. More waterfalls all the time.
Let's have a couple of people kind of be like, is this right? Really? Like, I'm not sure I remember that. Like, I want to establish the fact that not everybody remembers the music, even though it just happened. Not everyone remembers the music perfectly, right? Because one of the things that it's easy to assume once you see the music is that all of the Valar know the story of creation back to front and its fate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Capital F fate.
Is this the way it was supposed to be? Is this how it was supposed to go?
Yeah. So we should have questions coming in and not just, yes, we're all together on the same page.
Yeah. Exactly. They're like almost like I have a lot on my plate, right? And everyone else is like, is this what it was, really? And there's like some murmuring, some chatting of like,
because I felt like there should be more, rock.
I felt like there should be more dreaming. I felt like
no, he's not there. He's not there yet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we haven't met him.
Yeah.
So
Nessa can just be dancing around everywhere.
Like corralling Nessa should be real fidgety.
Yeah.
And she's kind of like,
like you start having a conversation with her and she's like, yeah. And then she just goes off and dances around the room a little bit and there's no room. So she just literally dances off.
No, that would be terrible. That would be goofy as hell.
I'm good at goofy stuff today. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, it doesn't like when I imagine that on television, it
would look very silly. Yes.
It's only funny,
yes.
You know what I mean? It's like it doesn't.
Yeah.
Trying to make these characters have gravity, and also giving them space to grow into what they're supposed to be is really hard.
Well, I don't feel like Nessa and Vanna, they don't need to have the kind of gravity
They do though, because if they like they are sort of Greek gods, but the Greek gods never had any space to grow as characters, right? They were just curmudgeonly and silly and ridiculous and terrible people, and that's it. And we don't have any, like, the thing that makes the Greek gods awesome is that they're awful people. They're the worst. They do whatever they want at all times, and those are the conflicts. And we don't have that option here. So to give them space to grow, we have to kind of make them really simple and naive. But simple and naive people do ridiculous nonsense, especially when you're at the beginning of everything and there's nothing yet, right? So I mean, I keep telling you that, you know, that's silly and ridiculous. We're not doing that, and it sounds really harsh and awful. And I don't.
No, it's fine.
I don't mean to be that guy, but it is.
You are sideways.
It's the nature of what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. The challenge here is to create characters that are not just comic relief, that are someone the audience will be interested in later. We're going to have a serious plot line with Nessa in 2-3 episodes where.
So we have to care about her.
Right, we're supposed to care about what happens to her with the whole Ungoliant thing. So if we're supposed to care, then she can't be silly. She can do silly things, but she has to be a real person.
Yeah, she has to be more than silly. And right now she's nothing because we haven't... The girl who dances around the room in the middle of a conversation was actually a real person that I know. She's a little flighty. So I was exaggerating her persona. She's someone who likes to dance a lot. And so she'll just kind of dance sometimes. But I was exaggerating that for Nessa, because Nessa should be even more so than this girl I know. Man, that sounds impossible to deal with.
She was a roommate for a year.
Oh, man. That's amazing.
She was mildly afraid of me, so dealing with her was fine. She wasn't afraid of the other 2 girls who lived with us, so they kind of did not enjoy that experience. Yeah. She was afraid of me, so it was okay.
We don't...
Well, let's who else is there? We have our 4.
Yeah. Well, the other 3 that are left are Vanna, Orome, and Nessa, and Yenna. There's 5 left. 4 left. There's 4. Yeah.
I think we can maybe introduce some of the Maiar a little bit. But I don't think we should make a really big deal about the difference between them.
They should just be there.
They should just be part of it. Like, maybe we can have them glow slightly less.
Well, they're smaller. That's the way that...
Like, physically...
Yeah,
smaller?
they're physically...
Yeah. That'd be okay. Do we want to shrink some of the actors, or do we just want to cast shorter actors?
No, we want to shrink them digitally. No, it has to. Yeah, no, it has to. Because if you cast smaller people, then they're usually not proportioned correctly. And then when you go to film them next to... I wasn't
suggesting we get little people. I was just saying slightly shorter than...
Right. Like, I know people in real life who are an entire foot taller than me.
Yeah.
I'm fairly short.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we can get that effect just by having people stand up.
But the thing is that we're going to see some of these Maiar next to mortal people, too.
Yes, and they'll be taller then, yeah.
Right, and then we're gonna have to, like, the Valar are
shortage of boxes in the world.
Well, like, I remember reading somewhere. I think it's just an estimate, but I remember reading somewhere that Thingol was 8 feet tall.
Jeez,
it was at least 7. I forget if it was 7 or 8, but yeah.
Well, no, he's definitely over 7 feet tall. He was the tallest person to ever exist.
I know.
So the Maiar should top
3 meters tall.
Should top that. And the Valar, so you're looking at
10-foot Maiar, 12-foot Valar.
Right. Basically.
Okay, I'm 5'3".
Yeah, I'm 5'7", so
yeah.
And I'm that's a very optimistic 7.
Yeah, I'm 5'2 3/4", but who's counting?
Yeah, it's like 6 7/8.
I wear heels. It's all good.
There's 7 on my license. Anyway,
that's less of an option for them.
Yeah, platforms.
So
my wife's not allowed to wear heels.
That's sad.
No, she can't. Just not like.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
As long as they're not like 5 inches.
I wish my girlfriend would wear heels.
This is a very strange side conversation.
Anyway, so okay.
So the Maiar do not wear heels and the Valar do. Good. Moving on.
Okay. We're having an argument. We're discussing Almoran.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
who else is there even besides the Fanturi?
Of the Valar?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me get the book and see who we forgot, because I'm sure we forgot somebody.
Orome, Nessa, Vanna, and Nienna.
Yeah, Nienna. We haven't done a thing with her yet.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, she was the beginning of the song, the Aina Lindley stuff. So she was there, but she needs to be here.
Oh, yeah, she does need to be there. So she does need to be there. We remember this awesome girl who was singing.
Well, she should be there. When he calls them all together to Almoran, she should be there. Like, all the Valar should be there.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should be there.
Including the Fanturi?
No.
They're Valar. You said all the Valar.
Yeah, all right. Sorry. All the Valar that we have
who else
said should be there should be there.
Who's not there?
Okay, so the people who are not there are Namomandos, Vare, his wife, Irmo, who is Lorien, and his wife Este, and Tolkis, who hasn't come yet, and Melkor, who hasn't come yet.
Yeah, Melkor hasn't come yet.
Yeah.
So that's a good chunk of people. Is there any Ungoliant probably should not be there?
Even though Professor Olsen specifically said she should be.
Yeah, well, you know.
Right now, at the beginning of in this.
It's in the episode. I just listened to it.
Yeah, but it was no.
No.
I mean, it was an idea. It was a bad idea, though. So let's ignore it. Anyway,
we're going to presume, Professor Olsen, that you're not listening to this, but on the off chance that you are, that was entirely Marie's idea to say that.
Oh, yes. I take full credit for that. I've got the obnoxious points up high enough that I can say really obnoxious things to people I shouldn't say them to. It works out really great for me in my real life.
I don't think Professor Olsen will take it personally.
No, what I meant by that was that later on it was established that Ungoliant should be an outsider who was a little bit more hungry for the light, and the lamps were being built, so the light was being gathered, and so she was drawn to it. So I think a later idea is that she's an outsider. An early idea is that she would be one of the people wandering around, just looking a little bit vaguely like Morticia Addams, and no one thought anything weird of it. But I think that was an early idea.
I like both. I like her being there because it kind of gives us an opportunity to see her. Because I don't know when else we're really going to see her.
Well, I thought it would be okay to have her be new for the episode that she's in. Like she's an outsider.
No, I think that's all right. We can do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Have you ever seen Once Upon a Time? They do it every week.
Yeah, I don't hate that either.
Okay, so Tolkien actually ordered the Valar, like from top rank to bottom rank in the list that he gives of them. So the list is Manwë, Olmo, Ole, Orome, Mandos, Lorien, and Tolkis. So it's very convenient that we've left out the last 3 on that list. Like it is the bottom 3 who get left out.
Right. And then we have 11.
And for the queens of the Valar, we have Varda, Yavanna, Niene, Este, Vare, Vanna, and Nessa. So Nessa is literally the least important Vala.
Which is why she gets kidnapped.
Right. Sure. But so that means the ones we haven't really done anything with yet are Orome and Vanna, who are spouses.
Yeah.
So we can bring them in Almiron somehow. Arome could be one of the people who's like, I don't remember the part of the song that said we should all be in the same place. I remember roaming around the wide world in the song. Like the whole fun song for me was roaming. So why
how awesome the world was when it was empty and they were. And weren't there supposed to be creatures?
Like, I've got a lot going on. And Orome is like, I don't know if I'm.
Yeah. So Arome could express doubts that Manway has the right idea without being a dissenting voice. He's like not disagreeing with the guy. He's like, I just don't really remember it being that way, and I don't see why that's important, but that's what y'all want to do. Sure, we can do it.
Well, and Orome especially is another sort of motor figure. Like, he kind of does his own thing most of the time.
Yeah. Who are the ones who...
Is it really only 7 Valar?
No, it's one.
Yeah, 7 Valar and 7 Queens of the Valar.
I think there's not a lot of colors.
It's like the Valar to me, so there's.
I'm looking at the Valaquenta right now. It's literally 7 and 7.
Damn.
But if you want the Maiar to play with, let me get ones that are here.
I mean, they should be there, but I don't know if anybody gets a speaking role.
Yeah.
All right, sweet.
Yeah. Chief among the Maiar are the 2 characters that we never mentioned in the SilmFilm project because we kept skipping them. Chief among the Maiar.
Who are we skipping?
Yeah,
What? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So we had the 14 Valar, right? 7 guys, 7 queens, and then chief among the Maiar are Ilmare, the handmaid of Varda, and Eanwe, the banner bearer and herald of Manwë. And we finally got Eanwe worked in just before the battle. Mm-hmm. But, like, according to the Valaquenta, he's one of the most important Maiar.
Well, he's there the entire time. There's no question there.
Right, but we never talk about him in the SilmFilm, so I don't know what he's been doing for the last 12 episodes. Anyway, so he's here. And presumably he should be like Manwë's yes man.
Yeah.
On some level. Like, yes, you want to go to Almiron? We should do that. I will help organize everyone to go do that. Like, that should be his thing.
Yeah.
Can I assign you, Marie, figure out something for Varda's handmaiden to do?
Well, let's see. Varda was making stars. So...
It doesn't have to be this episode per se. It could be anything.
Well, what if part of how they work it out, part of how they get Olmo to work with them, is to do the reflecting pool thing? What if they?
In Almiron we need some water.
Yeah.
And we want the water to reflect the stars.
Right.
And then there's a waterfall because waterfalls are cool.
Yeah, they are.
Let's see.
I mean, because we have to figure out a way to what? Okay, what if we give Varda a moment here? What if Manwë goes to Varda and he's like, I had this great idea.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do it. Olmo is being but and Varda's like, I have an idea. Let me go talk to him. And she goes off and talks to him because we're gonna see. We've discussed moments of Varda and Olmo having conversations because half the time they think Manwë's off his gourd.
Right. Here's how I would want to do this. We cut away from the moment, are we cutting away? No, right? We've had the sort of back and forth with the frame about so we just finished the whole working together concept, and then we can cut back and show the success of the working together, right? Mm-hmm. They've successfully figured out tree roots, and they've successfully, like, we turn around and we behold the majesty of the cliff face, which should be like 60 stories tall or something absurd.
Oh, yeah.
It should be
really
grandiose and huge and over the top.
Awesome. They should be awesome.
And then Manwë gets his bright idea and he says, we'll go. He tells the 4 that are there, he's like, this is going to be awesome. Or the 5, I guess, because.
Including him.
But then Well, but who's left then? That's well, no, it's not everybody. Who are we missing?
Of the five, after the five, we're still missing Orme, Vanna, Nessa, and Yenna.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we still just. So he tells everybody else, he's like, I've got a great idea. Meet me in the center or in the middle or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we kind of pan away.
Be over there.
Yeah, he tells them we'll meet in the middle, right? And so they go to the middle, which is Alderaan, and he says, "Meet me in the middle," and let's get everybody together and have a 2-hour meeting.
Can we have a moment where Eonway goes to fetch Orome, Nessa, and Vanna, who are like having a? What if they're not doing anything? Like,
I don't want to see what they're doing. I want it to be left to the imagination what they're doing. Because I can't imagine what they could possibly be doing. So just gather everyone else. Right?
Well, maybe
my computer.
Anway finds Orome and is like, I'm trying to gather everybody. And Orome says, I will help you with this task. And Orome helps gather people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it shouldn't just be the Valar. It should be everyone.
Right. So this is going to be some effort. So, like, we can see people meeting each other and, like, just pointing to the middle. And, we can have, like, a montage. Montages are great, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if we need a montage. We could have a montage. I don't know. I'm not ultra particular on the mechanics of how we get it.
We could show a few discrete scenes of people meeting and saying, come join us, kind of build up what it is we're doing in Alderaan.
From the various primordial ends of the earth.
And
so they come together.
Ungoliant can get missed. Ungoliant could be there somewhere and get missed.
Yeah.
Well, that actually, you know what? That should be something that he's maybe a little disappointed. He said, "Bring everyone," and they have most of them. He's like, "What about where's the rest of them?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Some of them wouldn't come."
Yeah. Or we could even have a scene where whoever's doing the gathering, maybe not Orome because he should be a good hunter, but someone else goes by and we see Ungoliant hidden in shadows. And we don't know who she is, but she's just there. And whoever it is who's gathering everyone walks right by and doesn't see her. So we know that not everyone was gathered.
Yeah.
Not everyone comes to the summons. And so He's like, this is all we could find. He's like, I'm sure there's more of us here. And he's like, yeah, well. He's like, all right, it's fine. This is good enough. So here's the plan.
You don't need that weird girl anyway.
Creepy, weird goth girl. And he kind of, and I mean, it could be sort of a speech, right? He can kind of be like, we were tasked with this by, and everything's going great. It's going really well, but show them the thing that you did, and then they like make a tree somewhere, and then he gives them like, this is what we figured this out by working together, right? This was a thing that came from teamwork, and I think we should try to do that more. And then so we can start here, and then we can spread out from here once we get the idea.
And we can do that everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And then we start getting the descent, and almost like, oh, I mean, that sounds okay, but I have all this stuff going on over here. And Otome's like, I mean, is that really what it's supposed to be? Like, I don't remember.
Yeah.
There's a lot of solo writing of things in my I'm riding solo. That could be the soundtrack.
I only work in black and sometimes very, very dark gray.
Yeah. Dead parents. And so we get the descent, and then you can, it should be sort of a descending into side conversation sort of thing. Like he gives his sort of speech, and then people start objecting, and they're like, and he says, "All right, let's have a recess. We'll talk amongst ourselves, right? And then we can have Varda talking to Omo, and if we want to have a couple of other people, like this would be a good opportunity to see who the new people are, because we just added 3 or 4 more big names.
Nienna does not contribute to group conversations, really. She's much more of a one-on-one person.
Yeah.
So she could have stayed silent during the big powwow, and then in the aftermath is when she would go up to somebody and say,
do you want to have maybe Manway like troubled by the fact that people are disagreeing with him?
Yeah, absolutely.
Should Nienna go to Manway then?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like, you look upset. That's kind of my area. Let's have a chat. And she reassures him, like, you have the right idea.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time.
And it's all going to end in tears, but you have the right.
And that's okay. Not all tears are an evil.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Do not say, do not cry, because not all tears are an evil, right? So yeah, and she reassures him. She's like, "This is good. This is in the music.
Good."
Her opening line though should sound totally like not helpful. She should be like, "I just want you to know that this is not going to end well." However, like nobody should start out feeling encouraged when they're talking to Nienna.
Nienna's not. Well, I mean, I don't want her to be like Mandos Light, right? Where
she's
like the partiest pooper. Like
that's what she is.
No, she's not. That's the wrong understanding of what
she is. Sympathy. She's someone who understands others' problems. So she understands Manway's concern.
Well, I feel like, but we've established that nobody really gets where she's coming from until the trees.
Right.
Okay, so like Manway, it should not. Whatever she says to Manway should not be overtly.
She's kind of maybe overselling how he's feeling. That to me is like, he's kind of like, man, this didn't go exactly the way I planned. But he's not, he's upset maybe, but he's not deeply troubled, right?
Right. He's not.
And she comes up to him and she puts her hand on his shoulder and she's like, or something, kind of heavy-handed. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, I mean, I wasn't miserable and depressed. You don't need to. Mm-hmm. But the basic, I mean, that might be difficult to do without making it look silly.
Yeah, because it's going to be like, she's going to be like, I understand that you're terribly depressed by all this happening.
There's no sadness in the world.
This is all going to be terrible. And he's like, well, I am now.
There's no misery and sadness in the world yet. Melkor hasn't arrived.
Right.
So Nienna can be supportive and helpful without being a massive downer or overselling the mopiness. Like, let's let the first couple scenes that we have with Nienna be really positive. She was the singer, and yes, her song was sad, but whatever. She was the singer. She was the first person that we saw doing music, and it was great and awesome, and everybody loved it and applauded it. Fantastic. And now she hasn't said anything yet, and then she's coming up to Manway and being like, look, I know that you may be a little bit unsure of your course because it didn't immediately all turn out the way you imagined it. Mm-hmm. You're on the right track. Don't get bogged down by the people who don't get it yet.
Yeah.
Just because not everyone signed up immediately
and
does not mean that you're not on the right track.
And Mandos isn't there yet, so she can kind of be filling that role until he gets there.
And he's like, how do you know? And she's like, it was in the music.
We're going to say
and then
float away.
Sort of,
okay, stop. I mean,
very Nessa sort of way.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Okay, cool. So now I feel like that whole sequence, like that's pushing 5 minutes. Like that could easily take close to 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily like one uncut scene, but sort of several cuts.
And I feel like Varda going to Ulmo, and I feel like the two of them working together should be the point at which, like, when people see Ulmo getting on board,
everyone's coming together.
So first we do Nessa and Manway, and she's like, "You've got the right idea," and then we cut over to Ulmo, who's kind of looking out on the ocean as he would do, and Varda's like, "Talk to me. Why aren't you on board with this? I really think he's got the right idea," and he's like, "I mean, it just feels a little small, right?"
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's so much more. I don't know if we should be. And she's like, "Well, I mean,
we can start small.
This is a good time to emphasize the bitterest needle, right?" It's like, and she's like, "Yeah, you know what? You're right. It is small, but it's not gonna stay there, right? Yeah. It's just a beginning, and small is important too.
Yeah,
we can't get caught up in the enormity of what it is that we have to do, and we certainly can't do it all at once, right? Yeah. The music was not over in a single note.
Yeah,
right? And that's kind of like, we'll do this for a while.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to something else, right? Yeah. And he's like, I'm still not. And then she's like, look. And then she shows him. It could be even on the ocean, right? The reflection of the stars against the ocean.
Why don't we do that, but smaller, and see how that goes?
What would be the difference between this and something smaller? And he's like, I don't even know. And he's like, well, let's try it.
Yeah.
And then they could go over to Aule and have Aule raise up a mountain and then do the waterfall off of the mountain into the reflecting pool that has like ripples and stuff, right? And then he's like, you know what, you're right. This is working. And everybody else kind of gathers around and sees all of this, and they're like, oh yeah, you know what?
And Yavana's raised up little plants around it.
Right, around the thing, and it's
and Nessa's dancing.
Right, of course. But she could,
Vanna and Nessa are dancing together so that we get to see the two of them doing something.
I would like to see her dance across the water. That would be okay.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that's goofy at all. I think
no, not even a little bit. Because I mean, why wouldn't they be able to do that?
Yeah, and everyone. That's a pretty extended sequence, right? That could take a minute to 2 minutes to 3 minutes for us to kind of see everything, and then we go back to the miniature version in the garden.
Yeah,
and we can kind of wrap up like, follow-up questions like, so this was and so this was the beginning of the world, and he was like, yeah, basically, and things kind of went on from there for a while, and then something happened. And he's like, well, what happened? And it's like, that's a story for another day.
Are we going to end every episode with, but that's another story?
I mean, at least the first couple, I feel like we have, because he's gonna want to be like, well, what's the next step? And he's like, that's a whole thing that we have to do another time, right? Once we get to like
that should be a dark note. 6, like that should be a dark note, because we're going to Melkor next, and so
exactly. So I would pan away to maybe a shadow and flame picture or something in the library. Like I could totally see, the camera kind of coming away from the garden, going back into the library, and
we're not there yet, but
scene or something like that.
But just so I don't forget, for the next episode, I think that in the frame there should be some conflict, because somebody, I don't know who yet, but somebody should not want Elrond to tell Estelle Melkor's story.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have somebody interrupt?
I mean, I feel like the logical.
Glorfindel?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. That's who I feel is the logical person, like the go-to person.
Estelle
stop this.
Question: well, what went wrong? What was the problem?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and Elrond is like, well, it involves a very powerful Valar who we haven't really talked about yet.
Yeah.
Well, we have talked about it though, right?
Yeah, we not really. We
He was
talked
in-
about him during the music, but like
I'm
this
not
is
thinking
an
around the
extended
exact
telling
music,
of
but he
Melkor's
says that involves
story.
very powerful very powerful Valar, and yeah, Glorfindel comes in and interrupts, and he's like, "A word, please." And then he's like, "Are you really going to tell him the story of Melkor?" And he's like, "He has to learn sometime, right?
Yeah.
Better he learn now."
Well, I don't want to introduce Melkor at the end of the episode because that's a throwaway, and it doesn't do him justice. If we're going to introduce him, I wouldn't.
It's the hook for the next episode, man.
Yeah.
It's not a throwaway.
Well, here's an idea then.
Is
Eladan and Elrohir are both there when Elrond is wrapping this up. So if Estelle says, well, then if the whole world's not like this now, then what happened? And he's like, well, that's a story for another time, but there was another Vala that we haven't really talked about too much yet. Eladan and Elrohir could give each other a look like, really? That's the next lesson? Like, you're going there? And it's their dad. They're not going to call him out.
Right.
But they could at least give an indication of like, So then if Glorfindel does interrupt the next episode, it should be really obvious that it was either Eladan or Elrohir who went and told Glorfindel, guess what?
I can't say anything to my dad. Maybe you can talk about this.
I don't see Eladan and Elrohir taking issue with how Master Elrond deigns to teach his pupil. You know what I mean?
No, it was more the topic of conversation would just make them be like, oh, hey, we're getting there already. Like,
Well, and also, like, it may have been, they may not have been going to talk to Glorfindel to call their dad out. They may have just, like, gone to him for advice. Like, what do you think? Why
would they do that? Like, that doesn't work.
Who else would they go to?
Why would
well, I don't think they would care that much.
Like,
okay, all right, that's fair.
That doesn't jive for me. Like,
I only meant the like expression of like, oh hey, over the fact that maybe Elrond took a little bit more time getting to that story with them. Yeah. Knowing they had a longer lifespan to work with, he might not have jumped right into Melkor.
It just works better for me if Glorfindel interrupts the story. It's a good stopping point for us, and it's a good moment. It's a good hook. It's a good way to
but
like,
how do you introduce somebody
to open with that conversation in the frame in the next episode? You know what I mean?
In the next episode,
not
now.
Next episode, I can totally see that. I can't see ending episode 3.
What 2? We're only on 2.
Episode 2 that way though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of the episodes, like the way it works for me in my head is, at the end of episode 2, Glorfindel interrupts and says, "Can I have a word with you?" And he's like, "What do you need?" And he's like, and the question is posed, you're gonna introduce Melkor at this stage, and we kind of, the closing shot is Elrond's face, like it's just Elrond's reaction to that question, and then the open is a cold open.
Well, what if Elrond is troubled? Like Elrond himself is conflicted about it.
Because remember, elves don't use the word Melkor; they don't use that name.
Well, the Noldor. Well, Glorfindel.
Right.
I would
Glorfindel's an Noldor.
Just say the Dark Enemy, so we don't know
or whatever. I mean, we can use any sort of oblique reference we want, because like nobody's going to know what Morgoth is at this point, except people who already know.
Because we haven't said Morgoth yet. We're not.
Yeah, exactly. So
and we're not going to.
Right.
We can make reference to that here, or at the beginning of episode 3. But that, to me, that is the most natural transition. An interruption of where we're at and a hook for next time. Right? you can't possibly expect to begin this lesson with the story of the enemy, and then we close on Elrond's face where he's like, I'm not really sure, and then that's the beginning of episode 3.
And so we just pick up right where we left off.
It's a little bit of a cliffhanger. Yeah, it's a little bit of a cliffhanger where we're like, you can't. It's a a very declarative statement, like you can't possibly, and it's new information. We're like, oh shit, who's Morgoth, right?
And who's we're not. Before. Well, I would definitely avoid saying the name Morgoth because we're not saying that until the name actually changes. But he could call him the Dark Enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like Morgoth a little better. It has more punch.
But there's been a decision made.
We haven't used the name Morgoth.
Because it's a reveal in episode at the end of season 2.
I wouldn't necessarily explain it to utmost clarity at the beginning of episode 3, but yeah, I'm not particular. We can call it.
But it's a reveal for the end of season 2 though. They're holding it back on purpose.
Yeah, I mean,
and I agree. I agree with holding it back. It has more dramatic emphasis that way.
Yeah, but again, like if they don't know who Morgoth is anyway, like, is it really a big reveal? It's
not so much that it's a reveal as when he changes his name and never goes back to the old name again. It's more powerful if you literally do that. If it's a new name you've never heard before and you never hear it again, the old one again, it's more of a, we actually get to see that instead of just hearing it. And when you read the Silmarillion, it's like, and when Feanor names him Morgoth, the elves never spoke the name Melkor again. But obviously we just read the first few chapters where it was Melkor, and it just...
In the Silmarillion, doesn't he use the name Morgoth before that?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure the index knows, so I'm going to check that out.
He does, but he says something to the effect of that. But I'm telling you, it does work more dramatically if we bring up the name the first time when Feanor makes that change at the end of season 2.
Yeah.
See, I'm not sure I agree. I think it works better if
Melkor is counted no longer bound the Valar. His name is not spoken upon earth. Oh, hey. Oops.
What?
Melkor is counted no longer among the Valar, and his name is not spoken upon earth. Not just by the Noldor. Ever.
Yeah, well, we have to fix that. There's nothing.
So Elrond using Melkor's name is actually a big deal, and we should at least, if anyone overhears him, it should be a big deal.
That's been talked about. They've decided that to.
Elrond is a lore master. He's a historian. He's okay with it, and it maybe young Estelle doesn't realize it and uses it outside of lessons and gets in trouble. But yeah.
Well, maybe that could be the whole thing that
brought Glorfindel down on this situation. Yeah.
Maybe Elrond name drops Melkor very specifically, and we'll go back to that because we've already talked about him, so we know the name Melkor already. But he name drops it, and then Glorfindel throws a fit. He's like, "What are you doing, speaking that name?" Right?
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily agree. Like, for the average viewer who is not going to understand the dramatic impact of Morgoth without having a frame of reference for it, I don't. I'm not married to this, so like for me, it works either way. We can call him the Dark Enemy, or I think the name has more impact if we've used it once in the context of this conversation where it's clearly a big deal. And then we go and see how he got the name Morgoth.
I think if you get at the end of season 2, I think it will make a lot more sense why it's a dramatic impact. Because the first time that we hear the name Morgoth is going to be when Feanor is making his big speech, and like there's going to be firelight, and it's going to be off of his face. It's going to be.
But again, like unless we have a cultural frame to understand that Morgoth is the name that we always use, and Melkor is a name that we never use anymore, it doesn't have that impact. You know what I mean?
I understand where you're coming from, that the idea of a taboo name, you have to know why it's taboo, and
yeah, exactly.
So I get that.
Well, I mean, but that's what we're going to explain with that scene, right?
And
so
the reality is that Tolkien uses it in the Valaquenta. Like, in the Ianu Lindale, it's Melkor, but we never use his name. Right. So he tells us, you don't... he says...
is not on board with the whole not speaking Melkor's name as Melkor thing. But... Yeah. But that seems to be a great place. They were pretty emphatic that they don't want to use the name Melkor until
Morgoth.
Yeah, until he actually.
I am perfectly willing to beg for forgiveness rather than permission on this one. But again, I'm not.
But I agree. I agree with them though. I feel like it is
I think it works okay both ways. I think it works better if we at least show the audience that Elrond is doing something that is a little bit outside and also referencing, because again, like if he names him Morgoth and we don't know that that's his name that everyone else knows him by, that there is no impact, right?
But we will know.
How will we know?
Because we're about to tell the story. We're going to know that that's Morgoth now.
Right.
Well, I guess what he's saying is
Morgoth is because we don't. Who was Morgoth?
Right. But Fëanor is saying it. He's saying.
No. But that's the first time, and that's what he's getting at. Is that
right?
The name isn't as significant unless it's a name you knew was coming.
Right.
But on the other hand,
we know.
On the other hand,
but if you have no idea and you're hearing Morgoth for the first time, but
you're not, because guess what? Legolas says a Balrog of Morgoth in the Lord of the Rings films. So the audience will have heard the name Morgoth.
If they've watched those movies 40 times.
And that might be an extended edition.
I think expecting the audience to make that connection is asking a little bit much.
It definitely, but I wasn't relying on that so much as saying that the name Morgoth has been out there. The way Tolkien did it is he used the name Morgoth for the first time in the Valaquenta. So in the Ianu Lindale, he says Melkor, but we never use that name. Doesn't give the alternate name, just says don't use that name. You get to the Valaquenta, he says he's forfeited that name. He gives the meaning of it. First he tells you that Melkor means he who arises in might. He says, but he's forfeited that name, and now he's only known as Morgoth, which is the Noldor's name.
This is the correct episode in which to bring up that distinction, because this is the Valaquenta episode, right?
Well, if we were going to do the same version of storytelling that Tolkien is doing.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and it's not identical because it's obviously it's kind of at the end of the episode and would not be at the beginning as it is in the Valaquenta.
Mm-hmm.
But the deal is the written Silmarillion does a lot of, so this is what's going to happen.
Right.
And then you tell the story later.
And this is kind of the opposite angle.
Right. We're trying to tell the stories, like actually tell the stories. Right. So we can't use the same devices that Tolkien does because we're doing a very different setup. So doesn't mean he's wrong or that he's bad, that his deal would be bad in our deal, but we have to be careful.
This to me is more dramatically appropriate anyway to drop Morgoth as a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then
well, the reason the hosts were
later.
Yeah. The reasons for leery about that is they were concerned that they want us to not know that Melkor is the bad guy yet. There was a big deal of saying that maybe Melkor coming to Middle-earth, he's being good guy Melkor and like working with the Valar and everything's going to be great. And that the actual enemy is going to turn out to be Ulmo, who's been the holdout and doing his own thing.
I
don't think that they're really believing that any wool is going to pull over anybody's eyes about this. But they want us to sympathize with Melkor,
right.
and to start to convince ourselves that
It's. I mean,
maybe this will be okay. You know, like when you watch a movie and that you've seen before.
She is right that they have sort of referenced that. I remember specifically Dave, I think it was, saying that like it might be kind of cool if we don't even know that he's the bad guy until like maybe some other guy is the bad guy. But there's no way to do that. You have the first episode and then the third episode. There's no reason we're making up such a huge deal out of episode 3 unless we understand that this is look at how we're getting to this frame anyway, or this moment anyway, is that we just had everything awesome and great with no Melkor, and then what happened? Oh, it all got ruined because Melkor shows up, right?
But in episode 4 we're going to show that it doesn't get ruined.
We don't have any space to do that.
Okay, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying that that's where they were going with not making a big deal of the Morgoth thing, is because if he has a name that means black enemy of the world, like that kind of
the meaning of it, like I would save the explanation for Feanor's moment.
Yes. Okay.
Morgoth, black enemy of the world, right? And his cackling mad scientist moment that he has. But yeah, I feel like that moment doesn't. I feel like people are going to be like, "Am I supposed to know what Morgoth is?" I feel like I should know what Morgoth is.
Okay.
If we haven't had some sort of reference to it at all.
Okay, so that can be an issue for episode 3. The other thing that should probably come up in episode 3 in the frame that we haven't really dealt with yet directly, I don't think, I could be wrong, is Estelle being fatherless.
Yeah.
Because
I think that has to happen. That has to be revealed in episode 1.
Right, but I mean the dealing with it part. Where I meant is, we just got done saying, like, look, see, there's conflict in the world. Estelle's growing up in Rivendell. Rivendell is a peaceful valley completely isolated from the rest of Middle-earth, where there's not a lot of horrible stuff in conflict. So for him to say, but what went wrong then? If he grew up in Rivendell, why does he think things went wrong? Obviously, he has a framework, even as a 10-year-old boy, that goes beyond Rivendell's borders. And that, I think, needs to get explored at some point. Of what does Estelle know about the greater world? And the answer's got to be something. I mean, he knows his dad's dead. He hears stories of the elves who go out and come back. He knows something about what happens outside of Rivendell.
Something's up out there.
Right. He's not like he's not a child being raised in like this paradise Eden and doesn't know that there's bad things. Like,
all right.
And that's good. We've had him say something that makes it very clear that he knows. You know, well, then what went wrong? How come there's bad things in the world?
It is now 3.5 hours since we started.
Yep.
And we are at a good closing point because we finished an episode.
Yes.
I am hoping that, the next episode is going to be another long one because it's a lot of not much.
Yeah.
Hopefully, beginning with the 4th and 5th episodes, we can actually start to pick up the pace a little bit and try to do 2-ish episodes at a time.
Okay.
Otherwise, we are going to run out of time to finish.
Well, also they
gave us a deadline.
They they gave us more to work with from episode 4 on.
I definitely think they did.
So I think that's going to make it a lot easier. We're not going to have to make minutia decisions as much.
I mean, I enjoyed doing that. I'm just worried about how long it's taking.
Yeah.
Yes, fair enough.
And I think we've done mostly right by them in terms of what they set out. So,
okay.
I promise to do more actual editing work on the document this week. I go back to work. Actually, I have work in an hour.
Yeah, so we should let you do that.
Okay.
But, I will actually get in there. I'm not going to make you be like the scribe or anything. I'm actually going to get in there and do some work this week.
Okay. I mean, I don't mind doing like the initial. Like I'm still I need to do more on episode 1 because I'm still in the second act of episode 1 right now.
I have no idea what you're doing, and I need to do it for you. So, in Aule Olmo fashion, I need to correct your mistakes. Actually, I the only real and I said this before, I don't know if you remember, but the only thing that I really have to say is that I think it just needs a little bit more. I think you.
No, I agree. Well, that's why I want to go into it at different levels of Zoom. So, like, I did a basic outline, and I'm working on a more detailed outline. Then I'll go in a little bit deeper than that, and by then I should have actual lines.
Oh, he wants to actually write pitch dialogue.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's exciting. All right, cool. I think we're good for another week until next time.
All right. So until next time, if anybody has managed to listen through all this, this has been the SilmFilm Project script discussion for episode 2 of season 1. The second try. There's another one if you can find it. Good luck. It's only about 20 minutes long, so it's not a big deal.
We didn't talk about the first one.
Much about useful things. We'll be on again next week, same time, same place. Whoever's here is here.
Whoever's not.
Yeah. My wife will be back from China, so
yay!
Yeah, I'm excited. Anyway, so thank you. Have a great day.